Yep, got me doing a last-minute adjustment as we go live. Because I have my laptop set up slightly differently tonight. So it looks slightly different. Actually looks less different than I was expecting it to. But say la vie. See, because plans. I have plans. I have intentions. And that involved setting up my laptop differently, because I'm going to make some videos tonight with my Home-Gronis, and I've got the camera set. See, normally I'd be pointing over there, but my laptop is normally over there. It's now over there. This is all good. Hello, Invisible Chicken and Luke and Kirsten. Nice to see you. Also had to mix up my pineapple and lemon juice because I didn't realize it kind of settled into a pulp at the bottom of the can and sort of globbed out. So, yes, I had to mix it, but it's, of course, very strong pineapple flavor now, which is nice. Nice. So, Friday night, formal Friday, the week's over. I don't know. You people have led me astray. Last couple of Friday nights. I'm probably not going to go as late. Kyle, we're fucked. I mean, yes. I'm intrigued as to what particular area you are concerned about with relation to fuckheadness. I like when people say, like, when you're not happy with something, what's wrong? And you just sort of gesture, all of it. It's the world generally not good. So many not good things. I'm gonna just try and have fun tonight. Gonna make Home-Gronis, and honestly, yes, Catherine, the angle is indeed different. Because I'm setting up differently tonight. Okay. The cops did get their way in New South Wales that said Black Lives Matter protests can't go ahead. Well, we'll fucking see what happens, won't we? Actually, I was worried about this pulpy pineapple, but it's actually really yummy. That's good. Used up my lemonade, mixing it. Yes, look, the world is indeed fuckhead. They're being quite threatening in Melbourne as well, the coppers. I think Adelaide's okay, Luke. The coppers there just went, yeah, okay, fuck it, whatever. And I think it's important to note the people aggressively saying no Black Lives Matter marches completely were okay with the lunatic coronavirus is a hoax 5Gs turning our brains to mush crowd. So they're gross. Kirsten, you forgot to make big ice. No, you'll have to improvise. I've always got the big ice in my freezer. Well, always is possibly too strong a word, but I have a lot tonight. Invisible Chicken, I like that shirt. You've got a shirt saying, Houston, I have so many problems. Yeah. Yeah, Peter, there's apparently Sydney and Melbourne are both threatening to fine people. You may be right, Invisible Chicken. Brisbane might be okay. Hi, Addie. How are you doing this fine evening? I think I should maybe get straight into making cocktails, my Home-Gronis, to do comparison. Because I've milk clarified. I filtered it 3 times, actually. It's a nice clear sort of orangey yellow now instead of that really dark red that it was. So I've got the oh god, I should be chilling glasses. What am I doing? I should be chilling glasses. Let me do that. Rocks glasses. put these in the freezer. Oh Jesus! It's all down there, big guy. Maybe one down there. There we go. So I've got 3 drinks. So I've got to chill 3 glasses. Hey, who wants to join the live stream? Let's just go straight into party mode. You're cold in Adelaide, Addie. Oh, well. Yeah, yep, Carl. I reckon straight into party mode. Open invite for the live stream. Is this going to do the thing where it won't post to Facebook? Kirsten, you made pre-batch Negroni and added a splash of the marionette cassis. Yes, I saw that bit in the stream. I'm going to have to go to Facebook and post the link in Facebook too, because StreamYard and Facebook aren't talking very nicely. Where are we? Yeah. So that's the link for joining the stream. There we go. Luke is not just going to be, hey, Annette, how you doing? So, wow, the more I have of this poppy orange pineapple juice, the more I like it. Kyle! How you going, buddy?
Hello!
Hello, hello.
Now before I literally have a Netflix binge because life has been really shit today. So I've decided I'm going to go ahead and watch 13 Reasons Why.
Oh, yeah, why not? Okay. I still haven't watched that, actually. But there's too much to watch on TV.
No, that's so true.
Yeah.
It's probably like a whole season I'm probably never going to get back.
Yeah.
But, yes. What the fuck is happening with our country? What's happening with our fucking world? I think that is the question of the hour.
The world. The world is... I mean, yeah, I'm torn between wanting to know what's going on and not wanting to be traumatized by what's going on. I mean, my God.
God.
Yeah. Oh, Pete's joining us too. Hey, Pete, how's it going?
Nope.
Oh,
nope.
No audio from you, Pete. Don't know what's happening at your end. All right. Oops. Click a button or two.
Nope.
No, it's still not hearing you, man. I'll tell you.
How about now?
Now we can. There you go.
There we go. Yeah, I think sometimes this laptop, the headphones registers as a mic. I don't know why, but yeah, we'll do it without headphones.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Yes. Yeah, I don't know if anyone, we're talking about how fucked the world is. I don't know if anyone else has been seeing on Twitter just the literally hundreds of different incidents caught on video of cops really violently assaulting people who weren't violent. And it's just like, ooh.
Like, the question also becomes non-violent people, but then they're also attacking journalists who are literally in their job.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, there's not even a sense of, like, covering it up. They're just doing it, and it is live on camera.
Yeah.
They're just doing it. Like, what is happening?
And they're aware of the cameras as well. That's the important thing to remember as well, that they are totally aware that they are being filmed in a lot of these instances. Them behaving as if they're in the public eye. They know what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, they've assaulted TV crews multiple times. They've beat them up. They've fired tear gas at them. They've fired flashbangs at
them. Cameraman in the face.
Yeah. It's wild.
It's just fucking crazy.
And it's like, if that's what they do in front of us, you got to start believing some of those stories you hear about what happens behind closed doors.
Yeah.
I mean,
one of the like, literally a CNN reporter got, like, they all got literally arrested live on camera during a live cross. You're just like, what is happening?
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yep. They just don't care. So everyone who always thought the stories of police brutality, particularly from not non-white people, although plenty of white people have got plenty of stories about police brutality. They'll be, oh, it's exaggerated. You must ask for it. It's go, okay, now you can see on camera, when they know they're on camera, what they're prepared to do. So what the fuck do you think they're doing when no one's watching? You know?
I'm just so frustrated. I mean, look, I'm a big proponent of like police doing their job, and I get it's a stressful job, and that's great, and I totally understand. But honestly, right now, my thing about that is like wearing very thin, and just the whole discussion about like people being like, oh, but white fragility, like what happens like when one race gets better, then I lose my rights. And I'm like, honey, you have been playing the same fucking card out for literally time and millennia for so fucking long.
Yeah.
Even when women were saying we want to wear pants in the office, and literally white men were like, hey, we don't want that because that's controlling our sense of masculinity. And it's just kind of every generation feels that sense of oppression. And I'm getting so sick and tired of people being like, oh, but like this, but like that. Shut up. Let them talk. Let them fucking talk. Let them be in the room, because clearly this shit has gotten way too fucking far already.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm far less charitable to the police in regards to what a hard job they have. I'm one of the anarchists that Trump loves talking about. You know, it's like basically, most of the people I know, it's like, collaborating with Food Not Bombs chapters to help feed the homeless, working with community groups, doing community days to make sure that people can get, the services they need. And yeah, basically, when you go back to the history of modern policing, because essentially before that you had sheriffs, who I have no doubt were shitheads in their own right, but they were very different from modern policing in that they were directly accountable to the communities they were serving, and that the community had a much better engagement with them because they were elected in a lot of cases. And modern policing comes in basically to break strikes and catch slaves. That's where it originates. And it's not really surprising that it's evolved into this institution that's hostile to Black and working class people.
But the problem that I have specifically is the police doesn't, I mean, we've seen in the last couple of years with the integration of people like the gay and lesbian officers in the New South Wales police, and genuinely this feeling of working with the community, is the biggest issue you have is the fact that they're not seeing what is right in front of them. The issue that they have is the fact that you have people who genuinely are oppressed because of the feeling of racial oppression, because of these very archaic ways of thinking, or because of these archaic ways of doing. The fact of, and like when people like the Sunrise Reporter in America talks about that we haven't seen this sort of thing in Australia, I'm sort of like, honey, are you fucking stupid? Like, talk about the fucking White Australia policy going all the way back to 1788, when all of this shit happened and we fucking massacred a shit ton of people, and we said, you know what, fuck you, I want your land, goodbye. Even literally to this week or last week when Rio Tinto destroyed an Aboriginal cave, because you know what, fuck the Aboriginals, we want fucking profits.
Yeah, a 40,000-year-old cave. One of the oldest examples of human existence on the planet.
Gone.
And they knew it was there, and they knew the significance of it, and they just blew it up.
You're fucking telling me, literally right at this point, that people are going to be like, but the cops are trying to do their hard, and blue lives matter, and the fucking all lives matter. Do you know what? I will agree with you. Yes, all lives definitely do matter. But do you know what the problem with that is? When one group of people is oppressed, then that doesn't become all lives matter. That becomes all lives minus Black lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And the whole line that the right wingers say about, it's on words, all lives, the Black Lives Matter is like the first phrase of a sentence that could be Black Lives Matter, and what we see is the authorities don't value Black lives, and they're telling us Black lives do not matter, and they murder us with impunity. But we're here to tell you that's bad. Black lives actually do matter.
Yeah, it's like showing up to 9/11 Remembrance Days and holding up a sign that says all buildings matter, whereas you're considering for other buildings. It's like, you know, they wouldn't tolerate that because it's such an obvious ploy to disrupt any conversation.
It's so much like all lives matter. Okay, great. Where the fuck are you then? Because if you believe all lives matter, you genuinely believe Black lives matter as well. And so you understand the oppression and the cultural bastardry that has gone on for generations and generations, even back before fucking slavery, literally saying that these things happen. And then people like saying like Martin Luther King and like the fact of like that happening and but he didn't riot, stuff like that. But you know, probably. But you know what happened as well? He fucking got shot and killed.
Yeah, he got killed before he had a chance to riot. That was the whole thing. As soon as that was escalating to the point that they knew they either had to change or there were going to be riots, they went, oh yeah, we're just going to kill a few people and cover it up and pretend it was like some insane white person because that's easy to do because America.
Also, with Martin Luther King, people really should look up the Deacons, who were part of the civil rights movement, and they were a Black armed force to protect the civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King. It's like this whole idea. His legacy has been so completely whitewashed as a whole. Because
actually, an incident this week where Dr. King's son, Martin Luther King III, tweeted as the protests were escalating. He said, "It's worth remembering. My father said riots are the language of the unheard." And then his menchies get full of white people telling him, "No, that's not what your father meant." And it's like, what the fuck? Oh my god!
White entitlement is just insane.
The problem is deeper than that, and I think we all have to realize that as a level, our society is systemically racist, has systemic racism in it towards people. It actually has systemic oppression to people who don't fall out, who fall outside the kind of white, cis, able-bodied way of thinking. And this is a problem.
Yeah.
The fact is the world has created for white people, and unfortunately what we're seeing fortunately I should be saying right now is because of Black Lives Matter and because of so many more things, we're actually seeing maybe what could be one of the downforce of things like capitalism in regards to things like socialism, and the fact that we actually started seeing that people's voices do matter, representation matters, the emergence of the fact of this. I mean, I can speak to things like, for example, the gay rights movement. 1969 started as a protest against the impossibly terrible homophobia that was there between the law enforcement and people who were transgender, diverse, queer, whatever. And that started.
Stonewall was a riot. Stonewall
was a riot because. And I think that's like, I'm non-binary pan. Hey. And I'm just like, chronically ill, so not able, even though I appear able because invisible illnesses are a thing, but that's a whole nother discussion because,
we do.
Bio women don't actually feel pain. It's all psychological. And then when you do the psychological thing and it turns out it's real, they go, whoops.
Yeah.
No, sorry, but yeah. In terms of the gay rights movement, I'm constantly amazed by the fact I've got younger siblings who are 14 and 17 years younger than me. And my younger sister is 14. She knows who Marsha is. I had no idea. I was 25 when I found out that a black trans woman was the reason that I have rights.
Yep.
And that is not okay. Like,
she's a
education. Yeah. And I think, like, I've been loving the fact that because of social media and the podcasts that have come out through things like Spotify and Stitcher and that, Making Gay History, which was a book from like the, I believe, 90s. Mm-hmm. Then he taken those audio, the guy who wrote it took those audio tapes, literal tapes, because, you know, 90s.
Yeah.
And has, with technology, brought them up to a bit higher standard. Some of them were very rough, but has then played those interviews. So you could hear people from the movement, from the early days, talking about it. And it's, there we go. And it's
tape
just
player, there you go.
And
an eBay
I think the thing that I find really frustrating is that even within the gay movement, people like Marsha were raised by gay white cis men in America who wanted to normalize homosexuality and anything that was too far out, like being trans or being a person of color while being queer, you know, anything, being a sex worker, oh God forbid, you know, which was the only thing you could do as a trans person in the 80s and 90s, because you couldn't get a normal job, because if you got outed, you'd probably get killed. And that was so problematic. They've destroyed our history. And now that we're trying to claw it back, it's really interesting seeing some of the elder gay, white, cis men going, oh, we were always here for the movement. And I'm just like, bitch, though you weren't. Bitch, though you were me when I came out as bi at 15 that I was not welcome, that I needed to pick a side, and my ass is probably sore from sitting on the fucking fence. When I accepted my gender identity, I was also denied by older gay white men. Like, fuck off. Those are the people who are problematic in the movement, because if they don't look gay, whatever that means, if they can pass as straight, they are getting all the same privileges.
Pure respectability.
But it's a sense of oppression from, like, think of the LGB Alliance. That whole fucking stupid, batshit, crazy thing, which is basically about removing the of the community, because those people believe that somehow lesbian, gay, and bisexuals do not have the same rights, because it's a completely different issue. Not even understanding the fact that, as we said, trans people are the ones who pretty much spearheaded a lot of the trans rights, a lot of the gay rights movement, whether it was at Stonewall with Marsha P. Johnson, whether it was Sylvia Rivera standing up in front of a ton of gay people instead of gay men and saying, where the fuck are my rights? Where the fuck am I? Where do I belong? And I think that is the problem we're seeing, is the fact that we are right now we're on a crossroads of really identifying how fucking oppressed people are, and talking about with generations and generations and generations of oppression, whether they be people of color, trans, queer people, sex workers, people with disabilities like you and I. It is just so fucking awful. And especially with things like the Black Lives Matter movement and stuff like that. Like, you know what I find really interesting about this is literally the Black Lives Matter movement, which is set up to protest and talk more openly about the issues related to police brutality and racial injustices towards Black people, have to somehow sign and give all this documentation to the people that they are protesting against.
Yeah.
It is so fucking crazy.
They've got to dox themselves, basically. Yeah.
And then they decided, but no, it's funny because there was a 5G and anti-vaxxers protest that happened. But God forbid, if you are Black Lives Matter, you are fucking awful and you are fucking terrible.
Yeah, and actually,
in New South Wales, Victoria, where police corruption has been probably some of the worst and known for being some of the worst. We're fortunate in South Australia that while in any organization there will be a level of corruption, they have been so long in the last 5 or so years really trying to cut down on it and calling it out, particularly in terms of sexism and racism, because of the fact that people who were trying to work in that at Safeway were being like, I can't do my job because none of the people I work with are actually treating me like a person. Can we fucking fix that? And they went, yeah, okay, that's a fucking fair point. We should fix that. And like, I was at a work event a couple of years ago where her name has completely gone blank, of course, because that's one of those Fridays. They were trying to say the word pentagram and called it a pentagon. And I was gone for 5 minutes. I was well laughing.
Pentagrams are one of those words.
Yeah, and like I was trying to say funds and
Pentacle,
money.
pentagram, pentagon.
Funny. I can't words. But one of the main spearheaders of the change in SAPOL was at a day conference thing I went to a couple of years ago and had said about how it's really hard because in the police system, you're in a hierarchy. So you're having to call out your higher ups who have been doing problematic behavior for decades, saying, hey, you can't do that. That actually makes me feel really uncomfortable. If you've got good management, good leadership, they'll go, shit, sorry, didn't realize. I'll improve. But when you've got situations like New South Wales, Victoria, and then obviously in a lot of America where it goes very unchecked, they're just going to run riot because they're just like, well, you know, there's one of you complaining and all the rest of us going, nah, fuck you. So we're just going to bully you till you quit. Or we might leave you in situations where you actually get killed on duty or we'll kill you.
But the fact of Mick Fuller, who, may I just say, has just gotten a pay rise from the New South Wales government, God fucking knows why, has literally said when that cop attacked that teenage person. Now, granted, yes, he had a bad day. Now, granted, I will understand that that person probably not should have said that. They shouldn't have said those set of things to that cop. But what I will say is literally, if you're a cop, you need to understand the fact that there are racial issues relating to the fact of you wearing that uniform.
Exactly.
There are people who are going to fucking hate you, not because you are black or white or this or that or you're gay. Exactly. It is literally because you are fucking wearing that blue uniform that people in the community, in that black community, have been told to despise you because of systemic racial profiling and oppression.
Exactly. And it's really frustrating at times to try and get people in uniform to see that when I work with, and I've got friends who are paramedics, I work in health, and I have to remind sometimes people that I work with that, particularly for our First Nations people who might refuse to pay a bill, which, like, while I'm legally obligated to charge you for the use of an ambulance in South Australia, we've also been taken to court and we can't credit list. So that's public information. And I'm happy to tell any customer who asks because I have to, and it's legally true. And they'll say, oh, well, they're just not helping. And I'm like, well, hang on. Why are we, if people from First Nations communities were stolen from their communities for how many generations by medical professionals or by police, why in God's name would you expect them to ever fucking trust you? Like, I know that you're a good person as an individual. However, that person over there dealing with a psychotic issue because of the mental illness, because of generational trauma and how that works, and the whole thing, in theory, should be studying this more, but denial's easier, I guess. Like, you can see that person's not going to trust you. So why don't we work on building that community relation rather than saying, oh, it's their fault because they're First Nations? Not because it's to blame them, rather than go, this is a whole fucking issue. Let's unpack. let's sit down and work together. Let's actually listen to, like, Agent Sumner, who's amazing, who I'm disappointed that because I'm not well enough to go to the protest tomorrow because my immune system's shit. I won't get to hear him speak live. I'm hoping it'll be streamed because every time I go to an event he's at, I learn so much. He is just so brilliant. But yeah,
the other thing about it is instead of like literally taking protests and trying to cancel them through the court system, what would be really important is we could build and create these community relations, like, for example, the gay and lesbian officers that exist through the New South Wales Police, and also create programs like Transgender Day of Remembrance, which, again, a lot of people do technically have people do, especially in the trans community, do feel, even then, not being maybe people of color, but because of the fact of trans people and where that's come from, there has been, again, the systematic oppression, not dealing with race, but more dealing with transphobia. And I know stories, and I've heard stories throughout Sydney where people, because of the basis of their gender identity, have been targets of oppression, and police don't want to deal with that. And there is issues here. And yes, I will say, for full disclosure, it gets better. It does get better. But unfortunately, to what degree does it get better? Like, how many people, if we look at the issue of color, how many more people have to die? How many George Floyds have to go through? And I'm sorry, if you ever talk to me fucking again about the fact that white privilege doesn't exist, I want you to just remember two names in your mind. George Floyd, what's his fuck? I had such a good idea. I hate it. What was it?
Slightly ironic that you were saying don't forget the name.
I know, right? What's his name? Oh, yeah. So you've got one side, George Floyd, the other, Brooke Turner.
Yeah.
That's the problem here. One used maybe a counterfeit $20 bill. The other sexually assaulted a bunch of girls while they were completely drunk in the backside of a dorm building near a fucking bin. Now you fucking do the math and tell me which one is worse. Which one is better?
Convicted sex offender Brock Turner, he was going to be a swimmer, so best not.
I tend to be the most radical person in any room, and it generally comes down to, for me, talking about issues like that, these problems are structural. These problems are absolutely baked into the very DNA of some of these institutions, and it overlaps a lot as well. I saw Cornel West on CNN and was just amazed that he was able to speak for 5 minutes uninterrupted on it. But he was sort of talking about, particularly like, he's like, who was in office when Mike Brown was killed? Who was in office when Trayvon Martin got killed? Who was in office when they sent the National Guard into Ferguson and beat the shit out of those protesters and made the same claims about outside agitators and things like that? That was under Obama. Yeah. It is a structural issue that needs to be addressed from the ground up. And it really...
Hey, guys.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, it's just so frustrating at times where it's like... I don't think that representation solves this problem.
But I was listening to Afternoon Briefing today with Patricia Karvelis, and one of the writers in the ABC had said the reason why this specific issue may not have hit Australia is because we don't actually have that infrastructure of representation of stories from movies and TV and literature and all that sort of stuff to build and provide this platform to show the real historical oppression of people of color, and especially, may I say, trans people of color as well.
Oh, definitely. Even just like trying to get trans stories out is incredibly difficult. I've like one of the only stories that I can find that I keep shoving down everyone's throat at work because I'm just like, hey, I'm a non-binary person. There's not really non-binary literature, but Sandra Pankhurst is trans, and she also does some really awesome. Please look her up. And they're like, what? But her trauma cleaner talks about what she went through.
Just quickly, I'm going to leave the conversation in your capable hands for a while. I'm going to make my video with my Home-Groni, and then I'll come back and take it with everyone. But
why are you coming wide straight, cis boy?
I'm going to switch off my microphone so you won't hear me and be distracted for me. And I'll be gone for about 10 minutes, then I'll come back. But you all are doing great, so you all are in charge of the conversation.
Bye, white boy.
Like,
and away I go.
Sandra Pankhurst in her book talks about how, like, she, particularly in like 80s, 90s, easiest work to get, and really the only work you could get was sex work in some of the most unsafe areas. And she was doing sex work in, I believe it was Kalgoorlie. And she talks about them finding out that there was a trans person working and her having to swap rooms with one of the other girls. So when all the, really tough, manly men who'd been having sex with her but just didn't know that she was trans came to beat her up, there was a biologically cis woman there going, what's your issue? It's just, and it's sad that that's one of the only stories that we can really find out there at the moment. I would love to see more. It's nice to see some more queer voices around Australia getting a platform, like especially now Hannah Gadsby's taken off in America. That's been great. But
I also feel like there is such really interesting stories, especially from the US, when you think about people like Janet Mock and Laverne Cox, two ridiculously powerful trans people of color who are dictating the narrative, pardon the pun, about the issues related to especially trans people and especially their voices. I mean, Janet Mock's book, Surpassing Certainty, or Redefining Realness, if you have not fucking read them, please fucking do. They are biblical in the way that they discuss trans stuff with so much depth and
I think I will.
So much depth and so much humanity and so much and you honestly can't fault a book of hers. And then of course the way that you kind of see these kind of stories, even look, we can all kind of say shit about Caitlyn Jenner, but especially within the way that she's able to produce her own story and create her own narrative, and especially while she is a sort of 60-year-old woman with power and privilege, who has made very fucking amounts of mistakes, and sometimes definitely does not speak to the trans community. It's important to realize her story and watch even the mistakes that she makes, what she can build and create within the trans narrative that exists today. I mean, I've been watching.
I definitely should just say as well in regards to what I was talking about with representation. I definitely think representation of stories and, whether it's through media and things like that, are absolutely hugely important. What I was more talking about is people as representation in institutions, where it's like you have a black president, therefore you think that black issues will be solved. That was kind of more what I was talking about. But on the subject of recommendations, I haven't read her book yet, but I do follow her on Twitter, and she's made some amazing articles and posts. I think her name's Julia Sereno, and she wrote a book called Whipping Girl, which is apparently a really fantastic story about being a trans woman and sort of unpacking the sort of the nature of trans misogyny and transphobia and things like that. She's really brilliant.
The point of all this is they're still human beings, and I will say this, and I'll keep repeating this to people time and again, that nobody has any right or privilege to treat you less than human.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and it's definitely, I always think about with, because you mentioned Caitlyn Jenner earlier, and it's kind of like, there's definitely things to criticize her for, but at the same time, there is this kind of standard that anyone who is public and front-facing has to be a representative for the entire community that they're perceived to be ahead of, and that's really damaging in a lot of ways.
Definitely.
Because it doesn't allow
pedestals are pretty damaging.
Up and, you know, realize things, you know, and it's really, and it's really tokenizing and fetishistic as well. You know?
Yeah, I find it interesting how people at the moment are loving Boy George again because he's been on a few things. And I'm sitting there going, are we all forgetting the fact that he's really problematic because he's really biphobic and problematic to the queer community? But also, this is a man who chained a male sex worker to a heater in his house and refused to let him leave. Are we just forgetting that happened? Because, like, I feel like we shouldn't be letting Boy George be, like, the face of the queer community. Because, like, no, we've got better options.
I mean, to be honest, I've actually never thought of Boy George as a token head of any queer community, to be honest. Because genuinely, I've never thought him to be, I mean, honestly, the person that I would consider more of a queer icon, even though I don't believe he was ever specifically queer, would have been someone like David Bowie.
I think the thing with Boy George,
Bowie was legendary.
Boy George has normally been sort of clung to by a particular group of straight cis white women who like to have the gay friend that's not quite gay but kind of gay and can go shopping with them and might be a little bit zany, but it's acceptable because we can go clubbing. And I'm like, no, this is a guy who's like really, really, really problematic. Can we please stop celebrating him? He's got some great music, but also he's a trash human. So even if he's now claiming to be Buddhist, maybe he could be less biphobic, at least.
You know who else claimed to be Buddhist? John Lennon. And he was just...
I had a little bit of a rant at work today about, because I was saying how I'm getting sick of hearing people talk about the song Imagine and how we could be using it for protests. And I'm like, can we just stop idealizing John Lennon, who was a wife beater and a child abuser and just a general trash person? He wrote some great music, but a lot of the best of his music was done with Paul McCartney. And Paul McCartney, while he had his talk, doesn't seem to have been anywhere near as fucking problematic.
No. And Paul McCartney has said this: you can judge a man's true character by the way he treats his fellow animal.
Exactly. I think, it's frustrating that because John Lennon was killed the way he was, he's been martyred. And so people are very willing to forget the fucking horrible human being he was, rather than being like, hey, he's shit. Okay, let's find someone else who's maybe not so shit to help the movements.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a problem with sort of the way that people relate to music and art that they like. And it's kind of like, you can like some art made by some very problematic people, but you have to be honest about the problems of those people. Maybe not support them monetarily if they're still really horrible and still doing.
Like don't buy Chris Brown albums, but if you're gonna listen to his stuff, maybe just pirate it. You can do that these days. Get money.
I saw an art piece, and I was like, "Oh, this art piece looks really nice." And then someone said, "You do realize Adolf Hitler drew that?" And I'm like, "Oh crap."
Yeah, it's always. I mean, I'm wearing a shirt that stop supporting racist bands, and it's it's a really big problem in metal communities in particular, because there's a whole scene of Nazi shitheads who love getting their music out there, and there's always these terrible bad faith discussions about like, oh, I just like the music, man. That's all I care about, sort of thing. And it's just like, yeah, but unfortunately, the music that you are supporting monetarily is going to normalize fascism. and that's really fucked, and you shouldn't do that. You know, that's and it's
No.
irritating thing where I go to metal shows and I see people with like Burzum shirts, and it's like, I understand that Burzum's music is influential on black metal as a whole, but Home-Gronis is not only a neo-Nazi shithead, he's also a murderer and served time in prison, and is just a fucking awful human being. So, like, maybe don't normalize, you know, supporting him monetarily. Maybe that's a really bad thing. You know?
Yeah. Whenever I listen to something new, I always look into the background of the artist or band. And if they don't have such a good background, then I'm not going to buy their music.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I have noticed there are people calling out particularly rappers at the moment who profit off of, as they've called it, black dollars, because it's black Americans who are giving them their money. But there was, I think it was on TikTok. Yeah, I'm old. A lovely young man was calling out Lil Wayne, Drake, a lot of those type of rappers who, you know, oh, we're so hard, we're so tough, we're all about, you know, fuck the police and all that, but like, where are they? You've got Ariana Grande going out and fucking protesting. Like, how is Ariana Grande harder than Lil Wayne?
There's a line that I love from an artist called Sarog. She's a rapper in the States, and it was, where were all these killers when Mike Brown was attacked? And she was very much expressing that same sentiment. And yeah, it's very notable who's being silent or who's being very tactful with their sort of support for Black Lives Matters and things like that. And yeah, it's just, like, No Name is someone you should definitely follow on Twitter. She's an amazing artist, but she speaks about it all the time, and she speaks a lot about how, like, rap music has been held hostage by corporate interests, and how it is, you know, there's a lot of people who love putting, you know, like, Jay-Z's a billionaire. He doesn't represent working class black interests in any real way. And
that video of Beyonce speaking out with such a highlighted filter, she looked so damn pale. Like, I had some beautiful friends who are people of color going, great, I feel real represented by now by you whitewashing yourself. And I was like, I was thinking it, but I can't say it. You guys can say it. Like, she's got no idea what the real struggle is right now because she's so far removed and she doesn't listen to her community.
Yeah, and there's a great rapper called Akala who's from the UK as well.
Yes.
And he was talking about particularly why he doesn't use the N-word in his music anymore. And he was talking about the story of record companies would get very upset because words like cracker or whitey were very prominently featured in a lot of rap albums at the time, and that disappeared, but the N-word was the one that stayed. And it's just like, you know, this is something to reflect on. And like, if people want to reclaim that word, it's not my place to say anything. That's totally fine. But it is very interesting that that word is very prominent, but the word cracker or whitey or any slur against white people is not so prominent, especially in regards to rap music. Yeah.
Here's what I think. I think it's really important that people keep this conversation and especially people of color sort of keep the conversation going. But I think, like a lot of issues and a lot of minorities, is we kind of do tend to lose the focus a little bit. The focus on these sorts of issues does need to be still the issues around oppression and the brutality of people of color. And that needs to come back to the fact that we need to challenge these perceived norms about how police deal with law enforcement, how culture deals with law enforcement, how the media talks about law enforcement, and how we make sure that we dictate the importance of how we integrate and create those stories. some of the best reporting that I've seen in the past couple of weeks has actually been a direct result of people of color being talked to, and them replying to that through some sort of live cross to say, this is what's going on. Peter Overton talking to a reporter from CNN being like, what's going on? And for her to educate her. The scenes with the 7 News reporter and a protester in California, in Los Angeles, again, really important points to kind of understand what is going on. Speaking those things with no form of filter, completely live, and it is so important that as we kind of move, and God knows what's going to happen tomorrow in Sydney, I'm personally thinking a lot of people are going to show up and it is going to be fucking insane to watch. All I'm going to say is if you've got a fucking camera, bring it fucking tomorrow.
Download the copyright app.
Yes.
Reminder to every Australian that we are not the US. If a cop asks you for your name, you are required to identify yourself by name, date of birth, and address.
Yes,
you are required to provide those in Australia. If you don't, you will be arrested. Just provide those details.
This is so true.
You don't need to provide anything else, but apart from that.
Just give them those details, and then all you need to say is, I will not answer any further questions without a lawyer.
Or no comment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's always been the most solid legal advice I'm constantly saying is like, provide them with what you have to, and from that point onwards, shut the fuck up. Like, angry say.
Literally every single law class that I've started since I've gone to uni in the last nearly 18 months, they're like, so don't talk to the cops, comply, give them these details, and then shut up. Because even if you're innocent, even if you ain't done shit, nothing coming out of your mouth is going to help. So just shut up. Don't
do their job for them. Don't do their job for them.
And I mean, ultimately, when you look at the history of policing, the only reason that policing as a job and as a real corporation type of organization thing occurred was because people were moving from country into cities, and rather than being able to community police because there was such a huge influx, it was easier to set up this sort of career. But then you had the issue of them not knowing these new people coming in, and that's then escalated to the point that it is now with the continued corruption. And you look at somewhere like New York, where the mafia has had a foothold in that for however long, and now they're trying to pretend that the mafia is still not involved, but you look at their unions and how much weight their unions have. Like, I am a union member, I am a union rep, but I can't just go up to a manager and be like, yeah, you're not firing that person, because like there needs to be legal grounds. Like, there needs to be more intimidation. You can't just do that. But in New York, you can.
Yeah, I met someone 9 years ago.
Go on.
And he was a narcissist.
I'm guessing that was your meeting with Trump.
Mm-hmm. I dread.
Go.
I dread that.
Go.
And he's also a KKK supporter.
That does not surprise me at all.
Yeah, no, speaking about sort of the history of police as well, it's like part of it, particularly in the United States, was that, you had a pretty big influx of immigrants from like Ireland, for example, that's in Chicago and Boston and things like that. But what essentially came with it was labor movements and people who were striking and union members and things like that. And that was a huge part of what they were initially used for, was to break strikes. And in the South, they were slave catchers as well. It is, like I support most of my complaints about the Australian union movement is that it has no teeth.
Yes.
But cop unions aren't unions. They're not. They don't represent. And also, this is where the real radical part comes out of me as well. Cops aren't workers. They protect capital. That's what they do. They protect private property. they are not workers. They don't need a union. The only reason they have unions is so that they can manipulate things like complaints made against them, or to leverage policy in a way that's more favourable to them, committing the type of brutality that we've seen.
I find it interesting that because of the assaults on first responders, there's been legislation pushed through relatively quickly in quite a few states. I believe Victoria and South Australia definitely, but I know New South Wales was looking at something. I can't remember if they've pushed it through. But where there's mandatory sentencing, or there's a mandatory recording of this offence on your criminal record, rather than it just being a suspended sentence. And it doesn't seem to make room for considerations such as if someone is intoxicated, if someone is having a mental health episode, if the police officer instigated the whole situation and that person's acting in self-defense. And that's problematic because you need them to be held accountable. And unfortunately, with the fact that all the mental health funding in South Australia in particular, I know gets cut like absolute ridiculous, and I'm sure happens around the rest of the country. Of course, we're going to have people assaulting first responders. They're the people who turn up to mentally ill people. But nurses and other professionals deal with that all the time, and I don't see them having to cause anywhere near the physical strain or having to press charges against someone for spitting at them.
No, and I've had a lot of sort of organising experience with anti-poverty network here in Queensland as well, and sort of come in contact with rough sleepers and sort of talking with them a lot as well. And it's just like, those are the people you should be talking to when you want to talk about how great the police are, particularly here in Brisbane, because the sort of the whole function of what police do is, like, with the introduction of the move on laws as well, it is just essentially harassment. And it's not really a coincidence as well that a lot, like, homeless populations, like, there's heavy representation of First Nations people, there's heavy representation of queer people, trans people as well, because they get kicked out of home because they got bigots parents, and it's like their contact with the police is always going to be hostile, it's because they show up and they confiscate what they need to live, and then they tell them to go elsewhere when they had just found somewhere that they weren't going to get rained on, and they kind of trusted people enough not to, like, steal their shit or beat them up or things like that. It's just like the amount of then they carry guns, and they do work that is supposed to be reserved for people who have huge amounts of training and, like, social workers and things like that. But on top of it, it's like, the weight of these institutions is just fucked.
Exactly.
And I think in WA, when I was living there, I'm sorry, Adele.
Oh no, you go.
When I was living in WA, the police said to me, "If you ever run over an Aboriginal, keep driving." And I'm thinking, no, that's just wrong.
Well, guys, it's been fun. I'm going to head off, but have a good Friday. I know the world's but I'll see you guys later.
Yeah, good speaking.
No worries, Carl. We'll talk later.
Oh, he just had to go. All right.
Now Andrew's back. We've still got 4 talking, so
good. I'd left it in your capable hands. Who wants to see my Negronis now? That just sounds.
Yeah. Negroni. Can you pass me the webcam?
Negronis. Sorry. Okay.
Pass me a Negroni through the webcam, please.
Got my hand.
If only it didn't make it.
Okay, so this is the closest. These are all Australian content. Now, a standard Negroni, of course, has Campari, a very well-known Italian bitter aperitif. These are all I hate a lot. So this is why I went for an Australian alternative, which is still, if you like bitter, it's still super bitter, the Oka Amaro. And I actually toned it down. Right? Normally you do 30 mils of each, the bitter, the gin, and the vermouth. I only put 20 mils of the Okar in here. Oh, Kirsten, yeah. Kirsten agrees Campari sucks. Kirsten was the one who actually suggested, tone down the Okar if you're not really into the bitter. And so I toned this down to only 20 mils of the Okar, and it's still quite bitter, but the flavors, like it's all these sort of fruity and herbal flavors in there. You get the bitter right at the end. The bitter sort of stays with you. But yeah, if you like bitter drinks, this is a good one. And look, I always love showing this. I made one yesterday. Well, I made it in a live stream yesterday.
Yes.
And milk clarified it. This is the milk clarified one. It's like goes from red to this really light orange.
I don't know how I feel about this milk clarifying thing. It's so cool, but so creepy.
it never stops amazing me. Like I'm kind of obsessed with it. I'm doing a lot of it, but yeah, it goes from that red to just a really light orange, and it smooths out the flavors. The bitter's still there, but it doesn't quite punch you in the mouth. There's still a lingering bitterness. That's the quality of the Amaro. But it's an acquired. I think liking bitter things is an acquired taste. I
have that taste.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Addie, guess who's getting some Negronis when she comes to Melbourne then? And this is the one I'm always very cautious about saying the name. This is the white Negroni. Sounds like you're being very politically incorrect with that.
Yeah. Slippery slope.
Yeah, that's another Okar product in there. This one they call Okar Gold, and they just call that the Outback liqueur. This is another aromatic liqueur with a lot of herbals. If it's in terms of taste comparison, if you've ever had, particularly in a cocktail, if you've ever had one with yellow chartreuse or gentian in it, this is a good substitute for yellow chartreuse or gentian. It's a much lighter herbal drink than the Amaro. So this is where did I put? Oh yeah, this really. I love this Australian sweet vermouth is so funny. Regal Rogue. The copy on the back of the bottle. I've got to read it to you. It's hilarious. All
right.
Leading the charge in the vermouth renaissance. The Regal Rogue is a new world discovery that celebrates the spirited adventurer in us all, with a flirtatious liaison of native Australian aromatics, marrying a lively citrus and subtle floral character with Semillon grape. Regal Rogue brings bountiful merriment to all manner of soirees. So these are like lemon, myrtle, desert lime, native thyme. These are all the flavoring in these is all native Australian botanicals. The gins as well, I used Applewood Gin. That's the same distillery that makes the Okar. And I used the Tiny Bear Gin in the white Amaro, in the white Negroni. So I'm going to edit all this up and put the video up early next week.
Oh, hello.
Of my Home-Groni. Oh, is Opie coming in to say hello? Yeah, there we go.
No.
How many Zoomy laps did you just do, baby?
Yeah, right. Just doing that.
Yeah. I was like watching him because he's mad at me. I shut the study door because I've got stuff in there I don't want him to knock over.
Yeah.
And I'm obviously a horrible cat parent for doing that. So he's been doing laps and charging right to the door and stopping right in front of it, just like, you can't get through it. It opens out. You're a moron. It's also got a round handle, which he doesn't know how to use. So,
yeah. So I was just checking because about being Aussie made. The Applewood Okar stuff is all in Adelaide. Regal Rogue's from Sydney, and Tiny Bear is Victorian. From the Melbourne suburb of Knoxfield. So little bit of diversity in the Aussie locations of these. And I've got
you having so much booze that you had to look for a second to find one of the bottles.
Oh yeah, no, we did a quick count of them last night. It's like, there's 60 bottles. I'm slightly embarrassed. Yeah, sorry, Kirsten. I know you were talking about the idea that I would tell Kirsten what is what with Australian spirits is mildly ridiculous, as it's Kirsten's job. The full moon tonight is apparently there's a lunar eclipse at like 5 or 6 a.m.
It's a 4-day full moon. It's the dingo or the cold moon, and tonight there is the partial eclipse, but it's a total eclipse. Yeah, but I'm a bit witchy, so
yeah,
a little bit excited. But that's part of why the study's shut, is because I have crystals and a tarot deck and a couple of other things in there that are on windowsills because it may rain and I can't have them outside. But OP will leave my crystals alone if they're in specific areas. If they're outside of the designated areas, they're fair game.
Open season.
Cats can be very choosy like that.
Yeah, he knows not to touch a couple of areas. But yeah, once they're outside of that, he's like, no, it's in my space. I'm like, but you don't need to sit there. You have a windowsill.
Kirsten's mocking me because I've only got 60 bottles. Kirsten, it's your job. You're allowed to have more bottles when it's your actual job. It's just my hobby. I mean, okay, like we both know that the Bitters Lab, tonight's Applewood stream was from the Bitters Lab in Fitzroy, which is a fantastic little establishment. When I was going, one of the recent times I was going in there, and one of the people working there, and I think it was her parents actually own it. And we were talking, and she's saying how her parents have these cabinets of extremely rare spirits, like individual bottles of whiskey that would cost thousands of dollars, and and they've got all these cabinets full of things. I mean, I've got a fair few, and I've got like 60 bottles, and she just looked at me like, right, and it's not your job. It's not your business. You've just managed to acquire 60 different bottles. Okay, sure.
Yeah. Wow.
I think, but I tell you, while we're talking, Aussie made and good quality, another vermouth. Where is it? Because you can get this at Dan Murphy's, which is actually where I first got it from to try it. Maid and I, they make a few vermouths and similar things. And in fact, I think it's the same. Kirsten will confirm this, but I think it's the same people also make liqueurs under the name Marionette. And I've got a Marionette liqueur over there. So this is Victorian as well, but they make like sweet, dry, and classic vermouths. They're really good. Like, until I found this, I was not really into vermouth. Like, it's going, some drinks say vermouth, so I got some Cinzano because it's cheap. You know, Cinzano is shit, but it is cheap. This is much more expensive than Cinzano, but worth it because this is actually drinkable. Like, I seriously, sorry.
How long does a bottle of that like store for?
Once you open it, you need to keep it in the fridge. But a couple months in the fridge. That's since I've been keeping my ledger of alcohol, the only thing I finished was a bottle of Maid and I. Lasted about 2 months. This one might have lasted slightly longer than that. But
because that's my concern with some of those having big bottles of mixers, as someone who lives with a cat who cannot drink alcohol for obvious reasons. Like, unfortunately, I don't have a drinking buddy, and with COVID still, I mean, admittedly, Adelaide hasn't had cases for a while, other than someone who was let back into the state, even though she came from the UK, had been tested, but they hadn't got her test results back. She'd been in isolation in Victoria for a week, and they were like, "Nah, fuck it, come back to South Australia, but stay in isolation." And then at the end of the 2 weeks of that, they finally got her results, which I don't understand how that took so long because no one else seemed to. And they're like, "Oh shit, you're positive. Well, you can't see your dying relative." Then why the fuck is she in our states? Stay in Victoria.
That was weird.
Don't want it.
That one was weird. That she got excused for quarantine and turned out to be positive. It was like, oh my god. Okay.
Meanwhile, I've got friends who may not even be able to come over for a friend of theirs funeral because they're in Victoria, and that's a whole shit show. So I don't know whether what they're coordinating. I'm hoping they can coordinate something, because I'm like, I can't do anything. I don't know this friend. That would be weird.
Oh, by the way, Addie, good news from Kirsten. Maid and I comes in small bottles. So, yeah. Welcome back, Nettie. So,
Hi.
Sorry. Again, clarification why I was talking about those other ones, because on one of the live streams this week, a guy called Hugh Leach was on, and he was somehow involved with both Maid and I and Marionette. He's the brand ambassador for Maid and I, but he's actually a co-owner of Marionette, and those two roles are distinct from each other. So there you go. All these Australian makers. I've got to get some of the Marionette orange curacao, because I've used up my Cointreau, and I thought, okay, I always like having an orange liqueur in the repertoire, and I'll go Aussie. I know everyone raves about the Marionette orange curacao, so I'm going to get that. Mind you, the ones Kirsten was telling me about the other night from Tasmania, looking at they had a lime liqueur, which I never see lime liqueurs.
No.
And Kirsten was also saying one of the gin liqueurs they make is like to die for. And I was like, it's like, I've got to stop buying bottles of booze. Because it gets to the stage where it's like, I've got so many, they just go down so incrementally, because I'll make a couple of cocktails, but and then I go like, I haven't touched that bottle for a while. I'll look up some recipes that have that in it. And so, they last forever because I've got so bloody many of them.
Where was the puppy? Hi,
Puppy. Pay attention.
Meanwhile, because I won't let Opie near a new oil I got in the post today, and he likes the smell of it.
Oh dear.
I don't understand which one is this one.
Is that a Yule oil?
No, this one is High John the Conqueror oil. I'll see if I can pretend I'm a beauty.
That's good for beefing up your spells.
Is it even? Do you even focus? Not really. It's The Witcher's Apprentice, who are in, I think they're in Geelong. But this one has patchouli, rosemary, almond oil, and then it's also got the High John the Conqueror root in it. And it's supposed to help bring balance and luck and positivity out of things. I got it because it smells pretty and it makes me feel nice. But yeah, the cat wants to steal it, and I'm like, no, it makes me feel pretty. Leave me alone.
But High John the Conqueror is hoodoo and voodoo oil for giving your spells a big boost.
Yes. And I got another oil because I was like, I'm supporting her. She's a small business owner. So I got an attraction potion, which is Lang Lang, patchouli, coconut oil, rose, cinnamon, clove, jasmine, jojoba, and lodestone. I'm allergic to jasmine, but this one doesn't irritate me, so it must be actually quite pure and not full of garbage synthetic. So, but yeah, it was nice to support a little Australian business.
Yeah, look, I've got to save the way from my milk clarification. See, it's a nice sort of pink color from the red thing.
Why are you saving it?
Because Mrs. Angry's cooking with it. So I've made a couple. Yeah, well, it's like flavored cheese, basically.
She must be creative.
She made just the best cake with some of the other way. And it was very subtle, but it was a really sort of rich, spongy cake. And there was just this little flavor that you could go, yeah, I'm getting this little hint of all the boozy flavors in there. It was a really good cake. But I've made a couple milk clarifications in the last week. So, but the other ones, look, here's the other ones. they're just like white and grey, and now this really pink one's going in. So it's a little collection of whey for Mrs. Angry's cooking. Do a little Miss Muffet.
Oh, yum.
Whey.
I thought Nettie might appreciate. I got this book the other day.
Ooh.
Ooh, that looks pretty. And the Green Witch's Guide to Essential Oils, something for spellcraft.
Spellcraft, ritual, and healing.
Oh.
And I got it from my local Karma Living, which I realize how much I frequent that store when I go in after having not been in for a while, and they're like, "Hey, how are you, hon? I haven't seen you." And I was like, "No, I've been isolating because of the pandemic." Whoops, sorry guys.
I used to go to that shop that was in Hawthorne, and I can't for the life of me remember the name of it, but it was something really basic, like the Magic Shop or something. Yeah, run by a couple of run by a couple of witches, like full-on Gardnerian, I think. And yeah, I loved going there. And from there, I found out about classes run by Wendy Rule.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you probably know her. Know her name anyway.
Yeah, I've heard her name.
I went to 2 lots of her classes. It was lovely.
So I just tasted some of the whey for the first time, and it's like cream cheese. It's like cream cheese with the Amaro in it. That's nice.
It's on my playlist, by the way. I just don't have enough time right now while study's still happening. No, you can't attack the book. Okay, nothing can be in a full moon psycho mode.
Yeah.
It's a strawberry moon, according to Dan Andrews's.
So, yes, strawberry moon in Native American terms, and in Native Australian terms, it's a dingo moon because it's when dingo breeding season starts, or it's also known to the hemisphere as the cold moon.
How do you find out about that? I want to know.
So, yeah, in the Facebook group Australian Witches, that's really helpful. There's a couple of Southern Hemisphere groups, but also I've been trying to track down more Southern Hemisphere witchcraft pagan Facebook pages, and that's not just Facebook, Instagram pages as well, and that's been really helpful. So
yeah, I found lots of witches on Instagram. They're a breed from the looks of it. I'm looking at Australian witches now.
And there are some witches who are using social media and technology to draw in energy to use their craft, which is just fascinating. I love that concept. I laughed at. So Safa's asked, is coconut oil healthy? Like any oil, it can be healthy if used in the right ways. Coconut oil is a healthier oil in comparison to some other things out there. But it's also good for the skin if it's not overused, because it is really hydrating and low irritation. So that's why I
was going to use some coconut oil to fat wash some rum. I think just get a plain rum, and you basically warm up the coconut oil so it goes really liquid. Pour it into the rum or whatever beverage, mix it, and so it goes in, and let it really permeate. And then freeze it, because then when you freeze it, the rum will rise. The oil will rise to the top and solidify.
And you can take it off.
It's really easy to take off, and then you just filter the rum to get the little pieces out. And then, I mean, you can use the coconut oil in cooking then, and you'll have rum flavored coconut oil.
Oh, that's so good.
You'll have coconut flavored rum and rum flavored coconut oil. That would probably go really well in rice or something. That would probably be really good in rice.
And Kirsten asked what I was hoping to attract. At the moment, I'd love some passing grades for uni. Let's be real. Get through this semester. I got back one of my assignments and I was like, oh, I passed, thank God. I just need another exam.
What classes are you doing?
So I've got tort law, which is the one that I'm just like, I just need to pass this. I hate it so much. It's civil law, and it's not often based in legislation, which is what I struggle with. It's So, is your situation that you're dealing with enough like this other civil case that you can argue to use that decision, or are there enough differences that you can argue not? And I'm like, I don't care. Maybe just don't sue people because they tripped. I don't stop it. Don't like it. So I just need to pass it. And that I'm doing commercial transactions, which I thought I wouldn't like because it's like e-commerce and taxation and contracts and holy shit. My course coordinator, Mark, is brilliant. He makes it entertaining and engaging. It's so good.
A good lecturer makes such a huge difference.
And like, so all of our clients the entire semester have been Bob and Wendy from what we do. So there have been situations where we have to consult with Scoop and Diggy. And I'm like, I love this because it's a little bit ridiculous. And that lets me just think about the law, not the individuals in the situation, which is what I need to focus on. I need to be in the law, not the people. So that works for me.
Yeah.
And then, I've just got a criminology topic that I've got one major assignment left, which I'm finishing this long weekend. So I can hand it in a week early because I do not want to be stressing like I did for my law assignments.
Yeah, that's cool. Oh, say hi, Aussie Gun Bunny. Invisible Chicken did law as well, saying they did pretty well in tort law, but hated equity.
Whereas I love that type of stuff. Like I love boring, dry, black and white law. Like that's my jam. I hate this. I'm not here for it. I did also laugh at Safa and Luke saying about burning witches. I kind of take a little bit of pride in the fact that I know had I been alive 200 years ago, I'm the kind of bitch they would have burnt. I'm fine with that.
Today, my project was I've been learning how to sew, so I've been putting patches on my jacket. I managed this probably would have gotten me burned in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, there you go.
I have a beautiful handbag with that on it.
This is a patch from a band called Zeal and Ardor, who are really fantastic. He's a guy who basically, he started off as a bedroom project, but he's now evolved into a full band. I went and saw them play a couple of years ago, I think. It's basically like really extreme black metal meshed with African American, like really old, like
spiritual
spiritual songs, stuff like that. Those two together, and it's really great.
Cool.
They're different too.
Yeah. I love it when people do hybrids with metal. Like you can find some great stuff on YouTube. There's a mod called Bloodywood. They marry up like Bollywood type music with metal and hip hop. Like this mashup of hip hop, Bollywood, and metal. And there's a Mongolian band called The Who. Because they do like the Mongolian throat singing and stuff, and with a real metal and Eastern mashup. They're pretty good.
I really love Skindred, who are a little bit ska, a little bit rasta, and are metal. And they're brilliant. I really want them to come back to Adelaide because the last time they were here, I couldn't see them. So, once this pandemic's over, if Skindred could please come back, I would be so excited. And Kirsten,
once this pandemic's over, if Paul McCartney can come back, I'd be excited.
Yeah.
I really like Witch
House. About the pandemic and not being able to go out is just I love live music, and it's been a bit hard without it these last few months. So.
Can you imagine when it gets to the stage where we say like, okay, we've opened stuff up for months and there's been no surge in community transmission. Fuck it, major events a go. Can you imagine the first live gigs? How people are just going to go right fucking off?
Oh yeah, it's going to be a party.
The true measure, though, will be: do they come for the opening band?
I think they'll show up an hour before the opening band starts, and just like people just go, I get to go out. I get to go out to a live concert. I get to be in a crowd.
so much.
What the
I
hell?
miss a good mosh.
Luke, what the hell is nerdcore hip hop?
Oh, nerdcore can be really good. It's basically means you've got really nerdy themes and lyrics. So you get nerdcore hip hop, nerdcore metal, and possibly my favorite and weirdest one is chip tunes, where the music is emulating like 8-bit video game soundtracks. Chip tune stuff can be really fun.
But like Nyan Cat. That's what I think of with 8-bit.
Yeah.
No, Nyan Cat.
I need another hot toddy. I'll be back.
So I was like,
I think I've mentioned Look Mum No Computer before, who managed to build a synthesizer out of Game Boys and made a synthesizer out of a Mega Drive as well. Yeah, just lovely. The Mega Drive one in particular, I just love because that's what I grew up playing. That was my first ever console, but the actual synths and sounds that you can get through it's amazing. I love it.
There's someone on YouTube, or possibly more than one person, who's managed to make tunes with old floppy disk drives. They've programmed them to sort of make the grinding noises at different pitches, and they'll play whole tunes. They've just got this wall of floppy disk drives, and they've programmed it to play tunes based on the pitch that they were at. It's pretty clever. Like really wild that someone puts that much effort into something that is like such a simple novelty. I love it.
On the complete opposite of impressiveness would be Rob Scallon has a shovel that he plays, in which someone's just attached a string to it and a pickup on it, and he makes the most metal songs imaginable on the shovel. He did he did a great video as well about because he recently got the world record for the world's largest pedal board. And he had a whole bunch of pedals left over from that, and he was like, can I make a beautiful evocative ambient composition with the shovel?
YouTube did one of its weird recommend something a bit left field. Must have been because of the type of music I was listening to. This dude had made this really complex machine that dropped metal marbles onto piano strings, essentially, and it was huge. Like, he was building it. He's an engineer, and he's just building it, and he's making all the pipes, and they're different lengths and different widths and whatnot, and he's programming it to drop the balls in so he can play songs on this. And they cycle all around. Like, it drops all the balls and they cycle around and go back, and it's like, okay, dude, I am impressed. It's a very weird thing to do, but I'm definitely impressed.
I saw a overdrive pedal recently where you can change the timbre and the tone by inserting different liquids into the pedal. They've set it up, and it's my mind can't even like comprehend what it's actually like, the actual chemistry and sort of electrical engineering of it. But it's fascinating. And I think the first warning they gave was, do not fill this with piss. This will not be.
Well, I'm wearing a jumper that would get me heavily discriminated against in America.
Canada.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
The Canadian flag. I'm seeing if I can find this guy, because I don't even know how and why it showed up. I've just searched unusual musical instruments on YouTube. Here it is. His YouTube channel is called Wintergarten, so he's German, and he's he's been doing it for 4 years.
Wow.
Okay, because there's this 4-year-old video of him developing it. So, what's he called? He's calling it a vibraphone.
What are you doing? What are you doing, Kat?
Yeah, my cat just ran away from me.
There you go. Another black cat. There you go. The two of you are definitely witches. There you go.
Yep.
I was Invisible Chicken saying, Mick Tambo saying you're the voice in an Indigenous language. That does sound cool.
I also drink from the skulls of my enemies.
Yes.
Enemies.
Yes. That's
What are you, a Nord?
Yeah. I've got like a dozen skull decanters or glasses around the house.
Speaking of skulls, one of my favorite things whenever I do a criminology topic is inevitably Jeremy Bentham comes up, and pretty much no one who's not weirdly obsessed with fixating on things and then going down deep rabbit holes and then being like, how did I end up here? Doesn't know that Jeremy Bentham actually, so he was someone who we study in criminology because he came up with this idea of a prison system where the guard tower was in the center and you could always watch the prisoners at every time. So in theory, they wouldn't do anything wrong because of the all-seeing eye. It's really problematic.
Isn't that Foucault?
The panopticon.
Yeah, panopticon.
So it causes lots of issues and it's not good.
Well,
yeah. But Jeremy Bentham really liked a way that a particular Indigenous group of people preserved the heads of their warriors, and being a deeply self-obsessed white man of a certain time frame, decided that he wanted his head treated in this way. I believe it's pronounced Morton Mackay. I could be pronouncing that incorrectly, but Ask a Mortician did a whole video on it, and it's brilliant. But yeah, basically his friend who was supposed to do it didn't follow the traditional way because he also was a white man and therefore knew better, and so severely it looked horrible. And so now the university that his head and this fake body is at, they had to make a paper mache version of his head to keep out because it's less scary, and his real head is kept underneath him, but uni students steal it intermittently.
Oh, God.
I don't remember whether or not they got it back the last time it got stolen last year. I've still not seen whether or not it's been returned. But yeah, it's quite entertaining when all the lecturers know what you're talking about when they say Bentham and you go, Bentham's head. No one else in the class.
What's this man's name? I haven't heard of him, but he sounds like an anthropologist.
Yeah, Jeremy Bentham. He was absolutely bizarre. If he had not been a white man in that era, he probably wouldn't have ever been allowed to do any of the shit he actually did. He was far too interested in doing human-based experiments.
Yeah, I'm looking him up. His Wikipedia page.
Modern YouTube. Oh, okay. I haven't come across him, but
slightly gruesome pictures. Look up Jeremy Bentham's head, his real one.
Where did he come up with this idea? Like, which culture inspired him?
Hang on, I'll have a look because so Ask a Mortician literally did a whole thing on it, and throughout the whole video, she had this tiny little head pop up going Bentham's head. It's great. I'm double checking.
I just looked it up.
He left instructions for his body to be dissected and then permanently preserved as an auto icon. And it's on display at the entrance of the Student Centre at University College London. So
I wonder if they got his head back, though, because it was stolen last year, about middle of the year, and they got it back only
I went to a cemetery in WA, found Bon Scott's headstone, and I was told by the funeral people not to tell anybody that I found it because it keeps getting stolen.
Yeah,
it would.
Bon Scott,
If I ever become an internationally world-renowned anthropologist, I'm getting my head preserved like this guy, and I hope the uni students steal it. I hope they take it on tour around Europe and all the other countries. But I was just thinking of gnomes then. You know how people take gnomes and they take photos of gnomes in Paris and shit?
Yes.
Yeah. This is where my head was going. But actually, it would be far more appropriate for me to go to, everywhere but Europe as a head. just a preserved head.
I remember Paul Booth, who's quite a famous tattoo artist over in the United States. He had a story. He was tattooing The Undertaker, the WWE wrestler.
Yeah.
And kids knew that he was staying at the hotel and like asked to see him. So he went down, and they had been near a graveyard where there had been some sort of like a mudslide or something along those lines. And they'd found a human head, and they thought, "Oh, Paul would like this." And it was just this, ridiculous story of going, "No, I don't think I want it because I can smell it from here."
Okay,
It wasn't very well preserved.
Neither is Jeremy Benton's head, as per Luke's request. I have found a story on his head. That's Jeremy Benton's head. Obviously, those are glass eyes in it.
Yes. It's a really bad job when you compare it to I cannot find the spelling, so I highly recommend checking out Ask a Mortician's video because she goes through it all, but she actually shows what the traditional warrior heads are supposed to look like.
Okay.
And it's very much not it.
And also,
I would be most annoyed if I wanted a proper, warrior's head, and I got
down the bottom, so that's his head up the top, and then when you scroll down.
This is what's on display at the university. That's a wax head. That's not his real head, but it is his real body inside those clothes.
And then underneath
his real
head.
And
that head underneath is what the uni students steal.
Yeah. But look at the title of this article. Why philosopher Jeremy Bentham severed, stolen, and poorly preserved head is back on display. That is such a good article headline.
I'm sharing that to Facebook.
So every time I tell an 18-year-old who has no concept of the fact that there were really problematic and weird white philosophers, and I'm like, you're studying criminology. How do you not know this? But okay, welcome. Our foundings are in racism and colonization.
Measuring the size of people's skulls and
chronology. I can't. But I do quite love the horror I'm like, look, if you
so much.
Look it up. If you don't have a strong stomach, if you get squeamish at things like American Horror Story, maybe don't. And I'm fine. I'll be tough. And you see them flinch.
Oh yeah, speaking of Undertaker,
a bit happy.
I don't watch WWE anymore ever since Chris Benoit did what he did.
What was that? I pay no attention to that stuff, so that means nothing to me.
Chris Benoit murdered his wife, child, and then himself.
It's because he'd actually suffered probably traumatic brain injury, which affected his behavior.
Yeah, there was a great episode of Dark Side of the Ring all about that. It's gut-wrenching and it's really hard to watch. And his son, David, who was from a different marriage, who wasn't in the house at the time, it's hard to watch because he looks like him and very clearly is, like torn up about what happened. And, still loves his dad because he just, he kind of...
On that note, I've got to go. All right, good night, everybody. Au revoir.
Nightly.
Peace and love.
And mung beans. Yeah.
No, he contextualizes it by sort of saying, something was wrong to my dad, that wasn't my dad who did that.
Yeah, well, it was. It was a traumatic...
That's what they think happened with OJ, is that eventually when he dies, they'll cut his head open and have a look at his brain because they think he has that same kind of injury where repetitive head injuries has caused this aggression.
So we're talking about a lot of
more than half of American footballers have some sort of traumatic brain injury, and in 90% of cases, it's undiagnosed, and it's really dangerous.
There were a lot of people who they found with that disorder, upon autopsy, and like a large percentage of them killed themselves or I think someone actually, died in a police chase. The other one as well. It's apparently getting hit in the head is not a good idea. Who would have thought?
Yeah,
And,
hit in
like,
the head
I
20 or
would
30 times a weekend. Yeah.
Yes.
I wonder how many previous violent offenders who obviously we can't find this out about, but I wonder how many who had very traumatic and physically abusive childhoods had recurrent head injuries that then led to this excessive aggression. And while yes, it does excuse the behavior, it does explain it. Yeah. So I keep having to make that distinction with people. I'm like, you can have an understanding of something while not excusing the behavior, but you need to understand where it's from because that person may not be able to control that behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a really famous case from this is more or less the first time people started to consider the idea of injuries to your brain changed who you were as a person. A dude was loading a musket, like you do the thing where you tamp down thing, and it discharged and fired the tamping stick through his eye socket, and it went straight through his head. And everyone thought he was dead because it just went bang, and this thing fired, and it's like through his head. But his brain just kind of parted and let it through. And he was still not only alive, he was still conscious. And the medic was just like, dude, like you're going to be dead any second. And they pulled it out and he appeared to be fine. But then afterwards, anyone who knew him before the war said his personality was completely different. Because he'd suffered this traumatic brain injury that changed his behavior. And that was one of the first cases where doctors started to go, Jesus, maybe if you smash your brain about, it actually changes who you are.
It's like how many war veterans have been through hitting their heads against things as ricochet, or even just having their brain shaken in their head from ricochet from IEDs or from bombs or whatever, that would then add to other traumas that come along with war that's then caused them to become excessively abusive or to be suicidal and take their own life because they can't escape this trauma that the brain's been through.
Chris Benoit in particular as well. His big finishing move was a diving headbutt as well. And there were people who did it before him who basically all said, don't do it. It ruins your body, not only just from like your head perspective, but you get like horrible sort of like spinal compression and things like that. And it's like, even though you're not really making much contact with a person, you're still diving head first off the top rope. And it's just like, it tends to explain a lot, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, the thing about you're saying the soldiers, particularly American soldiers with their high-tech gear, in the last couple of decades, they've been surviving explosions and injuries that in previous conflicts would have killed the soldier. So they're because of the body armor they're wearing and the armor on their vehicles, their internal organs aren't being damaged to the point where it kills them, but they're suffering these seismic concussions that are fucking their brain up. And they, after they're discharged, they suffer all manner of mental illnesses that they never showed any sign of before. And again, part of it can just be the trauma of war, but another part of it, these dudes just got
blown up,
a range of explosive concussions that previously would have just killed them, but they've survived, but their brains just bounced around their fucking skull like a meatball. And lo and behold, that has an effect.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Having your brain just bounced around inside your skull actually affects how it works. So, Jesus, it's pretty intense stuff. But humans. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? It's like, we're trying to explain to people who have a very poor understanding of mental illness or mental health generally. It's going like, well, it can be physical trauma that causes damage that makes you. It can be emotional trauma that your brain just processes stuff really bad. It can be as simple as, the chemicals are out of balance in your brain, and therefore the messages your brain sends are not quite the right messages, and so your behavior and it's like that most ridiculous of all lines, it's all in your head. Yeah, that's why we call it a mental illness. It's like heart disease is all in your heart. You know, it's like
when I thought that a relative of mine a relative of mine, close one, was what's the word? Erroneously diagnosed as having Alzheimer's. I looked up a whole lot of stuff about dementia, and what they said was, it's basically your brain shrinking, but it starts at the back, and you can tell that this is starting to happen because at the back is where your vision is.
Yeah.
So their glasses will get dirty, and then they won't dress the same. They won't look after their grooming as much because they can't see. And then it moves around to the front. That's where you have your inhibitions. So it stops you from doing things like, saying the N-word, for example. Now, what was really interesting to me was that the N-word and other racial slurs, swear words, obscenities of any sort are stored not in the same part as the rest of your language.
Yeah.
So while the language centre on the left is being decimated by the disease, the swear words are kept on the right-hand side. And so all you've got left is swear words and rhythm, songs and swear words. And this is why dementia patients are so hard to look after because, and you just imagine, new migrants to the country, the best job they can get is looking after dementia patients. And they've got a bunch of people who are aggressive because they're not inhibited and who can't speak without swearing or using racial slurs. Yeah. No wonder it's a toxic situation. Yeah. Yeah. But I was fascinated to find out that, the words that we are not allowed to use, that always get that alarmed reaction when we're little, get stored on the other side of the brain for special occasions.
Yeah. It was kind of like years ago, I was with my ex who was Filipina and visiting the family in Dubbo, and one of my grandmothers at the time, she was in a care home because she'd had a stroke. And we were going to go visit her. And my family are just sort of saying in a roundabout way to my partner, the granny's she's always been a bit blunt and stuff, but the stroke seems to have really brought it out. So she might say stuff, and they're edging around it. And I just lean over and go, they think she's going to go, you're foreign. and start using slurs because she's got no internal sensor anymore. But we went and she was actually really nice. But it was so funny. My family were just kind of talking around it. She might say stuff. And they think she's going to say a bunch of racist slurs at you. Because she was always a bit rough like that. But now apparently her internal sensor is gone. And it was just like... Oh, I just want to say hi to L3 and James in the chat. Oh, yeah, like what we were saying before about saying something on the head. Tell someone with bipolar to snap out of it. That's not going to work. Which apparently, Mrs. Angry, who is a counselor, a psychologist, says they're reframing the concept of bipolar disorder as it's actually a complex form of PTSD, because they realized when they looked at it, it's actually a product of PTSD. So it's not. It's different to a number of other disorders in that it's usually the product of complex PTSD.
Well, that's the thing about this as well that doesn't really get sort of talked about very much is that yes, it's like there's definitely neurochemical identifiable effects, but also as well there's a reason why depression and anxiety and suicidality exists a lot more in oppressed populations compared to the rest of the world. And it's because of the social conditioning of it. As it turns out, if you are told your entire life that you are worthless and you don't deserve to live, you tend to internalize those feelings.
Yeah,
and manifest pretty strongly. So it can be. There's definitely a lot of mental illnesses that are genetic and passed down, but there's also a lot of mental health issues that are caused by structural inequality and society as a whole.
I've always been interested in medical anthropology for that reason. The way that human beings do adjust to their environment means that surely the brain is doing it too. The nervous system is adjusting as well. Does anyone know that SBS special is on Filthy Rich and Homeless?
No.
What's that one about?
It's coming on this week, I think. Absolutely recommend it. It's a 3-part special. Definitely worth the watch.
Oh, okay.
Check it out.
Second one.
That sounds interesting.
I also recommend there's a academic, she's Australian, called Cordelia Fine, and she wrote a couple of books. One of them was called Testosterone Rex, and the other one was called Illusions of Gender. But she speaks a lot about how there's this idea of a male brain and a female brain that's very popular amongst neuroscience, and kind of breaking down why, yes, there are differences, but there is very good reason to believe that a lot of those differences are culturally conditioned and not just purely because there's a difference in the brain as a whole. It's like, she's really fascinating in the way that she sort of breaks it down. But she also talks about hormones and how certain hormones get a very different bad rap in regards to behavior and things like that.
Yeah, a lot of people who argue things about difference between the sexes say dumb shit. Like, they'll often go to sports and go, "Oh, well, women couldn't play first grade rugby league, could they?" And go, "Well, neither can 99.99% of men, actually."
Yes, but all those men believe that at some point, if they had just made the right decision, they would be.
Yeah, there's a lot of fantasy involved.
I definitely freely admit there are a lot more athletic women than me that could wipe my ass in a lot of sporting competitions, because as it turns out, there's a lot of overlap, because you have people who, there might be a general sort of through line in terms of physicality, but at the same time, you're still going to find women who are better at some things than men overall as well, because it's not a fixed thing. It's like, my favorite one was that people were saying, "Oh, there aren't many women grand chess champions." Well, there are, and they have been allowed to compete with men, and they beat them. It's like,
It's like, I love it.
There was a really funny chess one a couple of years ago where a woman who was beating a lot of the grand champions was a really attractive younger woman. And afterwards, all the men were complaining, like they were basically distracted by how pretty she was and how nice her boobs were. And just like, dude, you're not making yourself look any better right now.
So either you're misogynistic or you're just shit at chess. Probably safe to go with the shit at chess.
It's pretty bad.
Was like, I laughed at the gym because that's been back for this week. I haven't gone yesterday and today because yesterday I had an hour nap instead, and today I didn't have the energy. But it's been interesting going back and chatting to a couple of the guys that I see around the gym, and like, being biologically female, I do have stronger legs and I find cardio easy, but my upper body strength I always struggle with. And I was having a laugh with one of the guys about how, because I haven't done weights while I've been at home, because I don't have weights at home, I've gone back to, there's a particular area in my arm muscles that just is shit. And I laugh, I've gone from 5 to 6 kilos, back down to 3 kilos for my, and that's plenty for my reps. But because I said to him, I'm like, you know what's stupid is that it's for things like I can't push up a weight that's too hard, and I can't lift up behind me. But if you ask me to carry or to pull down nearly 30 kilos, I can do that, and I can push with my legs almost my entire, like almost of like in weights of my body weight. So I'm sustaining my own body weight with that in. So I'm like, I've got strength there. It's just I can't throw a ball or anything like that with any particular strength and accuracy.
Running's for girls. Yeah, sorry. That line from Gallipoli. Men box, running's for girls.
Yeah.
It's very interesting as well. Well, I say interesting, I mean the word frustrating, when there's a lot of talk around trans athletes and things like that. And it's just like these people don't have the first clue what hormone replacement therapy actually does to bodies, because it's been definitively proved that it changes bone density. It changes, there's really, it's like it's going through it is basically a new puberty. So your body changes, it's which is why I just get endlessly frustrated with Joe Rogan being a shithead about trans women fighting in the UFC, as if like I think the trans woman in particular he was complaining about got beaten by a cis woman, but that doesn't fit his narrative about how trans women are naturally advantaged.
Yeah, that's kind of sort of insider knowledge. I've got to tell you, like I've got a trans teen, and that's the stuff I'm supposed to be reading right now, and I haven't gotten around to it because I'm busy.
I've got to have those conversations because I'm trying to work out what I want to do, being non-binary and being very physically feminine, much to my own distaste, and it's taken me years to work out why. So that's good. We got there, but I'm like, especially in the wake of the pandemic, trying to get into Shine SA to talk to anyone, and they call me when I'm at work. I try to call them back. Oh, they're not available. Well, then fucking tell me when you're going to call me, because I work full time. Yeah. And I'm nearly at the point where I'll age out of Shine being accessible. And it's just like, Jesus Christ, I want to get this sorted. I'm 28. Let me actually have a life I can live and maybe not hate myself would be good.
All that medical gatekeeping, I absolutely hate. It's just like, like people know what they're doing. Like it's definitely have advice and safety, but I just hate all the gatekeeping around it. Just like if people want hormones, give them hormones. Like
exactly. Like if someone wants to have top surgery or a breast reduction or a breast implant, that should not be an issue. And especially when it's so clearly linked to your mental health and well-being. How the fuck is this not part of Medicare? And I know Medicare is being stripped for many, many things, but even for that to be subsidized properly would be great. Because
I'm really worried that all these things are going to be stripped of funds completely now with this excuse. Maybe trouble with my worms now. With this excuse of, COVID-19 was, the pandemic was so expensive, but they give money to people who've got a lazy $150K for a reno.
That drove me nuts. Like, I know so many people who have been fortunate enough to be able to afford to buy their place, would love to renovate it, can't afford to. These are the people you should be giving a grant to, not people with $150,000 lying around.
Maybe invest in public housing. Maybe that would be a fantastic idea, considering there's barely any fucking public houses built in Queensland per year, even though we clearly have a homelessness problem that's expanding as a result of all this shit. It just makes me mad.
Scott Morrison should be on Filthy Rich and Homeless. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, he's dick. I mean, as a lot of people have pointed out, I've seen this with that $25,000 thing. How, what did you do something like, hey, people with disabilities who could really use $25,000 to fit out their home to make it more accessible.
Yeah.
Why not that? It's like I've been saying all along, Morrison and his pack of fuckwits are going to take absolutely the worst lesson out of what we've gone through with the pandemic and everything else, and they will make absolutely the worst decisions on what to do next. They are just fuckwits.
Even in regards to robo-debt, like the big announcement yesterday that they're going to compensate people, it's like they're still finding ways to like exclude people, and like we don't know very much at the moment. But the suspected thing that I've heard is that they're going to basically only include people whose estimates were averaged at the moment, and it's just like that's going to fuck over a whole bunch of people who got screwed by those debts. And it's just like, and you're going to have to pay huge amounts in court costs and fees and like that. And it's almost as if that the whole thing was actually ideological and had nothing to do with the finances, that they really just wanted to punish poor people and to scare people from ever engaging with the welfare system Centrelink in the first place. And people fucking died as a result of it as well. People killed themselves.
And hundreds.
What drives me nuts is where's the negligent to that? Like, where's the negligent death lawsuit? Because if that was any other type of institution, we'd be getting that pushed into. But because it's government, suddenly they're not responsible for their own actions.
Yeah, and it's not even just the robo-debt as well. Like, anyone who has any experience with job networks and mutual obligation would know that they are pretty fucked and absolutely contribute to the degradation of people's mental health. You know, I might be speaking from personal experience here. As well. No. But it's just like,
those networks are terrible.
Endless amounts of money to make them go out and make people feel like shit because they're not applying for jobs that don't even exist. You know, like
it's insane. When I was through status job seeking, before I got 6 months on a disability pension, because I finally got a caseworker who understood what my chronic health issues meant, because they're not stock standard, and then went, I used to be a physio. If you've got bursitis flared up and you've also got chronic fatigue because of your high iron, you can't do anything. So you get to have this for 6 months and then we'll review it. And in that time, it meant I could actually rest and recover enough to get the job that I'm in now, and I'm permanent, so they're stuck with me. But I got that job completely off my own back. I didn't get that through any assistance. And the resume template that they'd given me from this job seeker place didn't even help me. Like, I had to completely restructure it anyway because I was applying for a government job, and the template they'd done was more for bar work, as if I wanted to stay in bar work with chronic health issues.
I think I've known one person who's actually said that their job agency wasn't total shit, and it was basically just them allowing them to study a childcare certificate, and even then they still found their own job after they did that. It was basically just like, my job network is great because they did nothing and let me breathe, and then I got a job. And it's just like, that's a rare story, because it's always pointless busy work and just making you feel like shit, because that's the entire ideological agenda driven by them, instead of recognizing that like unemployment is structural and that there aren't enough jobs to get to people who are out of work at the moment. And it's just, it's so frustrating and fucked.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh God. Sorry, I just got distracted looking at some cocktails as well. But I decided, do I go to bed?
I'm glad you finished that line.
Oh, cocktails. I got distracted by some cocktails. Yes. Okay, good. It's the internet. Both of those things are on there, and they're both very distracting. Weird things that pop into my head. Yeah. When we're talking about shortcomings of the health system, just popped up. I remember a movie from the 90s with Tim Roth and Tupac Shakur in it, called Gridlocked. They're both heroin addicts, and they're best friends, and they decide we're going to get clean, and they basically front up to all the different addiction treatment centers, they're in LA, saying like, hey, we want to get clean. And everyone they go to is like, oh, fucking great. Today's the day you want to get clean. Today's the day I've got to handle 500 people coming through this clinic, and da-da-da. And it's really good in that it shows like, and this, the US system's only got worse in the intervening 20 odd years, but it's really just like, these guys is like, okay, they're junkies and they do the thing that everyone says junkies should do. Oh, we want to get clean. And the health system is just like roadblock after roadblock after roadblock after, and it's like everything. It's physical health, it's mental health, and Australia is like so much better than America, but the same problems.
I don't know.
I know.
There's no rehabilitation for junkies here. There's NA, but junkies are poor. Not coke junkies. Other junkies, meth and heroin. There's nothing. There's really nothing.
I called Ghost recently, which was really interesting. It was about using psychedelic treatments to overcome addiction. And it was a personal story that followed a woman from Canada who was a heroin addict, and they weren't quite aware of just how bad her level of addiction was. And there's a scene where they go through her flat and just go, yep, here's all these empty baggies that she can scrape out and use and things like that. But it was very telling when they were talking about her being on methadone as well, and just how unbelievably unhelpful it is as a program and as a treatment. And they were, because it stays in your system for so long. Overall, and it's just like, it's a really sad insight into just drug policy is another area that's completely fucked. It's like people are having to fight in the States in particular to be able to carry Narcan, which is a substance to help people who are overdosing, and apparently that's been a big legal fight in some places as well.
Because they want the junkies to die. They don't want the junkies to be resuscitated.
They don't see them as human, and they don't see them as people who might have a lot of trauma, who might be trying to cope with physical ailments or things like half the people on heroin in the United States got hooked because they were prescribed opioids because of an injury, things like that. And it is very clearly a health problem. That's what really irritates me about the whole thing, where it's just let's send police in to bash people's faces because they're using a substance, instead of saying, hey, let's actually treat you and help you if you have something wrong.
With my fourth year doing anthropology, we studied an ethnographic study where in ethnographic study you basically go and lived with the people that you are studying. So they were studying heroin addicts who lived under an underpass, and so they went and lived there with them a bit, part-time. And, they accompanied them as they went into the hospital system, as they tried to get themselves rehabilitation and all of that sort of thing. It's an absolutely fascinating study. And what they found was that, the law and order side of society was not at all talking to the medical side of society. So everything medical people tried to do, which was provide, this study was around the year 2000, 2001 in San Francisco. So they'd hand out, clean needles and bleach and stuff to, help them avoid catching AIDS. And the cops would come and say, that's paraphernalia, and take it all. So they were working against each other. On top of that was the Christian lobby, who saw addiction as the consequence of poor choices or sin, frankly, being
Christianity, ironically, being a very poor choice.
And I hate people with their choicey talk. Drives me nuts. So, yeah, the Christian lobby, who actually provided a lot of the rehabilitation, had so many rules that they had to, to get through the door in the first place, that it was almost impossible.
Yeah.
Those who really needed it were the last to get it. Another, just as a tangent, I suppose, another really interesting thing was that when people did get their rehabilitation or they did get some social housing, which was very rare, when they were taken away from their community, they suicided.
Yeah, not good.
Because they're away for, one of the stipulations is that you have to cut off all ties to your previous junkie life. And who's going to be friends with you? No one. If you're someone who has trouble, if with huge amounts of depression, you've had a depressing life, you've been living under a bridge for 10 years, being kicked by the cops and having all your gear nicked every few months.
Yeah.
And basically, on the edge of death for 10 years.
Yeah.
So let's take away the only sense of community.
You know what you made me think of, Annette? You're my vintage. You'll remember the Pogues.
Mm-hmm.
They're good.
Yeah, their song, The Old Main Drag. It's a really empathetic song for people essentially being the downtrodden, living on the street people, and just how institution after institution fails them, and they got arrested by the cops who kick the shit out of them, and as he said, and that ruined my good looks for the old main drag, and it's just so plaintive. The final lines of the song, after years of being a junkie and being beaten up and raped and abused, and the final lines are, "I know I'm dying, but I wish I was dead." And it was just like, oh, it's like, okay, you may not have personally been through it, but people, don't you? It's like that song is very dark.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of.
I don't remember that guy's name from the Pogues.
Shane McGowan.
That's the one. The guy with no teeth. And then he got teeth.
Got a beautiful set of dentures many years. Yeah, oh God, he was so bad. Back in the 80s and early 90s, he had what we called tombstone teeth, all these crooked, bent teeth that looked like falling over tombstones in a graveyard. And they eventually rotted away further and further till he just had these little black stumps in his gums. And then, I don't know, someone paid for him to get these dentures.
His new wife.
Yeah.
His new wife and the record company.
Yeah, made him look a lot less like he was dead. But
I remember him doing that Nick Cave video. That video of Nick Cave doing What a Wonderful World.
Wonderful Life. I got the CD single of that, Nick Cave and Shane McGowan singing together. And the extra tracks was Shane McGowan does a Nick Cave song and Nick Cave does a Pogue song. But I had a real soft spot for the Pogues. I saw them live twice, I think. And it was on the down. It wasn't at the very end of Shane McGowan being a hopeless drunk, but he was on the way down when I saw them. Yes, he got worse.
Reminds me a bit of The Fall with Marky Smith. There are people who would always say that you need to see the Fall twice. Once when they're really good, and once when they're really bad.
Yeah.
But I rewatched the Lou Reed interview recently, where it was he landed in Australia and he had a sort of cavalcade of journalists asking him about various things. And my favorite moment of that was they asked him about his drug use, and he was like, "No, I don't use drugs. I'm high on life." And there's a few more sort of derogatory questions, and then later they ask him, "What do you spend your money on?" And he's like, "Drugs."
Yeah. Who remembers the Happy Mondays from the 90s?
I do. I remember them.
That's some great tracks.
24-Hour Party People? Was that the movie
Yeah. The lead singer from them was notoriously bad with the droogs. And I remember seeing an interview with him. It was a while ago. It was at least 10 years ago, if not longer. He had a new band called Black Grape. But the headline for the story was, "Blimey, is he still alive?" And they were talking to him, and because he was bad for the drugs when he was in the Happy Mondays. And they were basically like, "Any regrets?" And he goes, "Well, there's two things. Like, one is there's a very famous, you can still probably find this on YouTube or stuff, but there was a concert video. Happy Mondays did a gig at Wembley Stadium with, just tens of thousands of people." He says, "I don't remember that. I fucking played Wembley to a full crowd, and I was so off my head on heroin, I actually don't remember the show at all." And he goes, "And that's fucked, because that's, 1% of 1% of people ever get to experience that. And I was there, but I don't remember it. And that's probably the most fucked things drugs have ever done to me, or I've done to myself with drugs." But he said the other one was like, I think it was the last Happy Mondays album. He, as the folklore has it, when they finished recording, then he grabbed the master tapes and he was locked himself in the studio and said he would destroy the master tapes unless people brought him crack cocaine and use off his head. And the interviewer says, "Is that real? Did that happen?" And he says, my honest answer to that is, I don't remember any of that time at all. But a couple of people who I love and trust, who have no reason to lie to me, tell me that's exactly what happened.
Iggy Pop was like that during the Punk documentary. There was a specific story of him dealing with a record executive or something like that they were sort of talking about. And Iggy was just like, "Yes, I've been told this. I do not remember this."
Yeah. Oh, God, Iggy Pop, he appeared on Countdown in the 70s, so clearly ripped off his tits. It was hilarious. Ian Meldrum trying to fucking manage things with Iggy Pop literally bouncing in a chair.
Going up and down and up. And he's like,
going up and down. And Ian Meldrum's going, "Okay, cool, dude. Okay, come down."
Henry Rollins calls Iggy Pop the undisputed king of rock and roll purely because the amount of drugs that Elvis did in his lifetime, you could put them in a big mixing bowl and mix them all up and go to Iggy, "Here, Iggy, have these," and he would have them and go on stage and have an amazing set.
L3's bring up Henry Rollins, who is, of course, famously straight edge.
Yes, he is.
Henry Rollins, although in his youth he freely admits to the various guys in Black Flag convinced him to do LSD and whatnot. Now, he ended up being... there's a really funny one on YouTube where he tells the story of this guy, his first acid trip, and it was just wild as hell. But yeah, Henry Rollins, notoriously for a punk dude, ended up being very straight edge and not doing the dreams.
Where he really sung the praises of a band called Sleep, who had an album called Dope Smoker, where he's like, I don't smoke dope, I don't enjoy drugs, I don't do any of that, but I love this music, and it's very clearly influenced by a lot of drugs. So I can't sit here and go, drugs are bad uniformly.
Yeah. I have to admit, I have a weakness for the writings of Hunter S. Thompson. Okay, and there's no way I'm ever going to endorse the level of drug and alcohol abuse that was apparently Hunter Thompson's daily life, but I am somewhat taken in by his writing. I remember a thing he wrote for Rolling Stone, was probably the early 90s, was when the American Republican pushing the anti-drug thing was this guy called Ed Meese, who turned out to be, just an absolute hypocrite, philanderer, deviant piece of shit. Who would have done it? But
you mean the baby boomer
anti-drug thing, and Hunter Thompson just opens the article with a quote from Coleridge's The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. In Kubla Khan in Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree. And he just talks about, okay, Coleridge was off his fucking nut on laudanum when he did this, which is heroin. And he's going like, and Ed Meese is never going to contribute to Western civilization what Coleridge contributed to Western civilization. So who's right and who's wrong? Just like
Safa, I don't know how much money Metallica spent on drugs, but I do know that Black Sabbath spent like 6 figures in one night.
That's perfect.
Cocaine.
Yeah. Oh God, 70s metal bands. Jesus Christ, that was a fucking wasteland.
It still amazes me, Ozzy.
Look at Ozzy.
Ozzy Osbourne.
Ozzy Osbourne.
Jesus. No, the 70s heavy metal bands, they were a wild and lawless bunch by any measure.
Still kicking. Just released an album though, so
yeah. It was so funny, like that the Osbournes reality show when I don't know, a year or so after it finished, and Sharon Osbourne had a falling out with the producers, and she tried to say like, "Oh, it was all their fault. We didn't know." And it's like, you knew, whether you want to say that was prescription drugs Ozzy was on or what, you knew how fucked he was at the time, and you knew how he would come across. But there was money in it, so you were okay with it. And it's like,
I always thought he was just brain damaged from huge amounts of alcoholism.
That is what I thought too.
He does have Parkinson's now, and it's sort of he did release an album very recently, but he's had to very much limit what he can do as a result of the Parkinson's he's developed, which is sad.
Oh, that's sad.
But I did
it's
see
really
he was
sad that Big Yin's got it too. Parkinson's. Big Yin. Billy Connolly.
That's what I was going to ask. Didn't he have that diagnosis as well? Because I know he's talked about it, and he's been quite honest about how much it's impacted, and it's just so hard and frustrating to see such intelligent and hilarious people be debilitated by something we just don't have enough understanding or control of.
Oh, yeah, Parkinson's is pretty cruel.
It's just old age. Really, in the end, it's an old age malady.
Yeah.
And it gets
is brutal.
We all cop it one day.
Yeah.
I plan to be there for that. Hopefully by the time I'm dealing with that, euthanasia's a thing.
Actually, okay, now again, the way my brain works, things pop in, and we're talking about the abuser. Sid Vicious, Sex Pistols, who was a major drug abuser, and although we don't know for sure, he in all probability murdered his girlfriend Nancy Spungen, and then he died of an overdose. There is a bit of ambiguity because Sid was so messed up with the drugs, you don't really know what happened with him and Nancy, but he in all probability murdered or killed her. He might, because murder is a specific legal term that means
it may have been accidental.
But he's probably responsible for her. He's probably responsible for her death. But you know when you see all those, true crime docos, and they're normally complete shit. There was a series on Foxtel ran it, but some American network did this series, and it was called The Last 24 Hours, and it followed famous people who died, and it went into a lot of detail on the last 24 hours of their life. Like there's one on John Belushi, and but the one on Sid Vicious, Sid's mum is still alive, and the interviewer's talking to Sid's mum, and she all but confesses to deliberately dosing Sid with an overdose of heroin because she thought he couldn't survive prison. Like he was definitely going to prison for Nancy's death, and she thought it was a mercy to kill him with heroin. She doesn't 100% say because that's murder. She doesn't 100%.
She's got to be careful, yeah.
But she 85% admitted she actually and I was just watching this going, oh, no. And then you see his mum basically say she dosed him because she didn't think he'd survive prison. And I was just like, what the fuck?
I can kind of get that, though, in that desperation.
Yeah.
When you don't have the ability to think clearly, and he I don't think he would have survived any form of incarceration.
Cersei,
proper mental health support.
Yeah.
When Cersei goes to poison her son Tommen, the youngest of her children, before Stannis' army takes over the city, she was sure it was going to happen, and she thought this was a mercy. At the same time, I'm absolutely horrified watching that scene. Yeah. And, John Lydon says that Sid Vicious's mother was absolutely evil. I remember him saying that in an interview. Absolutely evil woman. Now, I'm not saying it, but he did.
But he did, yeah.
It reminds me a bit of Dark Side of the Ring, actually, where, speaking of, documentaries, where it was talking about Jimmy Snooker, who very much clearly murdered his girlfriend in a hotel room.
Yes.
It was a violent altercation. It wasn't accidental, basically. Yeah. But they interview one of the sheriffs of the police department who basically didn't really investigate it and let him go because he was a famous wrestler. And that guy, watching that, I imagine, would have been a very similar feeling to watching Sid's mother at a certain time, because it's like, this guy is shifty, he is really dodging things really badly, and it kind of makes you go,
well,
I wonder
did you remember when Brittany Murphy died? And the very odd interview her husband and her mother did with I cannot think of his name. He's a one of the old classics of interviewing late night TV, and I just cannot think of it.
Like Parkinson or something.
For America,
Letterman.
Oh, Carson.
No,
classic American late night interviewer, anyway.
Yeah, but so they did this really weird interview where, her husband. Sorry, my washing machine is having a fit. Freaked out the cat. But the husband kept talking about how beautiful Brittany was and how she was perfect, and they didn't want to have an autopsy because of her perfect body and her perfect curves and all this. It was just so problematic and creepy. And he was creepy anyway. He had a lot of really bad red flags. Other than the fact that it was clear he was feeding Brittany Murphy drugs and controlling and manipulative. It's very unclear as to how he got into that whole thing, but he was married a couple of times prior, and those women had got out and said basically he was lying and manipulative and gaslit, and one of his, I think it was his first wife, within 24 hours of him moving in, he was doing a layabout, not wanting to chip in or something, and she's like, "No, this is done. This is fraud. You've lied to me. We're divorced. Bye." Yeah. But then mysteriously,
that sounds like Anna Nicole Smith's story. Sorry, just to interject.
Yeah, and
carry on.
Then Brittany Murphy, so they ended up saying she had pneumonia, but then her husband died almost identically. And Brittany Murphy's mother had been living with them, and when they did the crime scene, she'd clearly been sharing a bed with this man.
Oh dear, yeah.
And they found stuff with her first name and his surname on it, as if they were living as a. So it was really problematic, and Brittany Murphy's mum was highly abusive and controlling. So I do for the money, but there's not enough evidence because it was very fucking weird.
Well, it's kind of like Natalie Wood's death when, she went over the side of a boat. Pretty much everyone thinks either her husband, her estranged husband who was having an affair, Robert Wagner, or Christopher Walken killed her, or maybe they both were actually responsible for it.
I think it was Wagner and Walken couldn't do shit because he knew he had no weight to pull at that time.
Yeah. Like, no one thinks that was an accident. Everyone thinks it was either Robert Wagner or Christopher Walken who killed her.
She was told she was going to die by water. What bitch who's had a fucking fortune teller tell her she's going to die by water is like, I'll just fucking go into a boat and die in the night. No one does that. It's stupid.
Look,
Christopher Walken didn't do it. I swear.
I think it was Wagner.
Yeah.
I think most people think it was Wagner. Some people think it was Christopher Walken, but I think most people think it was Wagner. But
I think
this murky brown thing I've made here. I found a cocktail recipe I like the sound of, but it's very murky. So I'm going to milk clarifier. If you're on the live stream tomorrow night, I'll unveil what it looks like. You just got to remember it was this gross murky brown.
So salt water, and we'll see what it results in.
God, it looks even worse now. It's in milk. It looks like sick. It's like terrible. That is basically a tiki cocktail called Don the Beachcomber's Nui Nui. So the way I've made it,
that's cute.
It is a cute name, isn't it? It's got I put spiced rum in it, overproof rum, allspice dram, orange juice, lime juice, coconut sugar syrup. It says to put some bitters in it. Maybe I should put some bitters in it now as well. The original recipe said cinnamon infused sugar syrup and vanilla infused. Maybe I should put a bit of vanilla. I've got some vanilla essence. I will. I'm going to put a bit of bitters.
I would offer you cinnamon, but we've worked out the webcam passing doesn't work.
We tried. I've got cinnamon here too, but I'm just going to put in bitters. Actually, I'm just going to, fuck it, man. I'm going to put some cinnamon in here because I'll filter it out tomorrow. Yeah, this is an experiment. This will be cool.
Hey, Andrew. He's gone. Have you ever tried glow wine or glue-in? It's a kind of spice mulled wine from Germany.
Yeah, I've heard of Glühwein, but I've never had it. Okay, so I'm going to put some vanilla essence in as well.
Hey, look, they have a kitty.
OP's freaked out because the washing machine's being really loud because it's a very full load, and normally I don't. I was like, this won't be that full, and then it was like, this is going to take this long. I was like, I can't be bothered doing a second load. It's just going to stay in there, so it's really loud, and he's just like, what is this hell? Because it's normally a really quiet room.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to put a bit of cinnamon in it and then mix it. Okay, this is that cinnamon smells really good.
Oh, cinnamon is the best.
Mixy. Like, I don't have any. Actually, there possibly is some cinnamon sticks in there somewhere, but I just got some powdered cinnamon. I'll let that permeate overnight. Make quite the concoction, because a lot of milk punch recipes recommend, you basically make a spiced tea and infuse a spiced tea into it. The old milk punch recipes were quite elaborate with like rum and brandy and tea and spices and whatnot, and then they make a big vat of it and strain it through a cheesecloth and make it quite decadent. So look, that's the really unappealing color. It kind of looks like caramel now. Actually, it looks less. It looks more appealing than it did before. Honestly, kind of looks like caramel milk now. But yes, so we've got in my experience, it's going to be somewhere between yellow and amber colored when I filter it, because weirdly, no matter what color it is when I start, it always comes out somewhere between yellow and orange, which I'm fascinated by. Because, I've done ones that were very blue, or even they looked black, and then I filtered it through and they've come through.
There was that bluish grey one.
Yes. Yeah, and that actually that also came through like an amber color when I was done.
Yeah, that came out nice.
Yeah. It's an amazing process. No matter how many times I do it, it keeps it. I'll tell you what. My next experiment, though, I found it. I was just reading stuff on one of the cocktail sites, and they referenced a mob who call themselves Trash Tiki, and they're really funny because they're these really aggressive recyclers. They get really angry and they go, I'm sick of terms like sustainability and all this soft bullshit. You've got to just look. I'll actually bring it up and I'll tell you some of their headlines. We go to the Trash Tiki site. Their website is actually called Trash Tiki Sucks. TrashTikiSucks.com. And the various things. I'm going to do something called citrus oleo, which is like a citrus.
Kirsten, sorry, I can see Kirsten saying, "Why do you know why tiki drinks are mostly in those solid tiki mugs? I guess because they're ugly."
Yeah, it's a thing. I've got my cut glass tiki mugs. I don't have any solid tiki mugs. That was the thing it got popular post-World War II. Apparently, it was around before World War II, but it got very popular post-World War II with American servicemen who'd been in the South Pacific, and it was like their fantasy version of the South Pacific. But yeah, this Trash Tiki mob, there's a thing they call citrus oleo, which is citrus oil. It's a way to have a slightly different sugar syrup. It's like you get and I've got some lime and lemon to juice, and they say what you do is actually peel the citrus, because the inner bit, the pith, is actually quite bitter unless you really want a really bitter thing. So you get the peel that's got all the citrus oils in it. You put that in a bag, and then you sprinkle oil on it and sort of put it away for a day or so, and the sugar kind of leaches all the oils out of the citrus and starts to melt. And then you add some water to it and boil it up, and you get this sugar syrup that's also infused with the citrus oils that just gives it a different vibe. And so that's my next experiment, actually. And their article on it is called Citrus Oleo for Dickheads. And so there's, and even the way they say after doing a thing, oleosaccharum is what it's known as, but that literally just translates as sugar and oil. And they say it's great for texture, aromatics, and viscosity. That's in a way that simple syrup can't do on its own. He's going, it's whenever we know something has water or oil content that we can't extract without extracting something else undesirable, like the bitter pith or rind. But also, we fully have no fucking clue what to do with the thing, and all else has failed. You cover it with sugar and see what happens. So it's basically you just get citrus rinds, sugar, and all it is citrus rinds, sugar, and hot water. So it's like, you peel the rinds, cover them with sugar, and just leave it to sit for a day. And so the sugar leaches the oils out of the citrus, and it becomes slightly liquid. Then you add water, stir until the sugar starts to dissolve, strain out the rinds, and stir it until it's all the sugar's dissolved, and so it's completely liquid. So I'm going to try that. It's just like sugar syrup with a twist, because I've got some lemons and limes I want to twist. And like when they talk about, they hate the concepts of sustainability because they think there's basically lies and bullshit in it. And They've got one article called "Rise of the Greenwash: Wading Through the Sea of Sustainable Bullshit." It's just, and
that doesn't help.
You know,
it's unhelpful. It might be honest, but it's unhelpful.
Their hashtag is "Drink Like You Give a Fuck," and there's articles like "Keeping Your Shit Together on the Road." Ooh, another fucking straw article. So they seem fun, but I'm going to try that saccharum oleum thing. Okay, so Kirsten's saying after me having shown my brown murky tiki drink, that's why so many of the tiki drinks are served in the solid tiki mugs, because the drink itself is actually visually unappealing because of all the rums and stuff in it. They tend to be very brown and murky drinks and not very appealing. So it became the thing, serve them in a receptacle where you don't actually see the color of the drink so it doesn't put you off. So that holds true for this one, because prior to me putting it in the milk, it was a very murky brown.
Just, as I've been trained in anthropology, I just have to cringe at all the tiki mugs. Because I know, ancestors. Why are you drinking out of an ancestor's head?
Yeah.
Then again, I had this.
Yes,
but this is a specific one.
Yeah, but
this could be anyone.
Yeah, more people are waking up to, if you're going to do tiki, you should actually understand the iconography and not do something really stupid and insulting. Because too many tiki bars and tiki drinks and stuff do really stupid, insulting shit, and you don't even know you're doing something stupid and insulting.
Oh my God, yes. I went to a pub in Fitzroy a few years ago, and they had a weird plaster version of, I think it was Shiva.
Yeah.
That turned into a mermaid with a sparkly bra. And it was just all weirdness. And I'm like, no, this is just beyond wrong. I know you're doing collage and you're being creative, but leave it was really, I really took a good look at it. It wasn't fun. It was,
Yeah, if you're doing it deliberately, like you're going, oh, I'm going to mock blah, 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 religion or whatever. It's like, well, if you're doing it deliberately and you know what you're doing, then okay. But if you're just randomly picking some shit up, you don't even know what it is, and what you're doing is intrinsically insulting and abusive, you kind of should be aware of what it actually means. Kirsten's got the geeky tikis. Sorry, Mimsy wants to come in. I'll let her in so she can say hello.
Mimsy!
I need a new drink.
Right.
So I'm going to mute
okay.
this.
The geeky tikis are great. They are so cute. I remember getting a few people the Ewok ones because they're just adorable.
Yeah. I'm trying to decide whether to let this, maybe because I put the cinnamon in. Normally I'd filter this about now because it will take, an hour or more to filter. But maybe I should let it steep overnight to really get that cinnamon flavor in there, and I haven't decided. Ooh, decisions. What should I do, Mimsy? What should I do?
Apparently I need to adopt a cat for streaming purposes because everyone's got a cat on stream tonight.
Everyone else has a cat or a dog, or in Nettie's case, both. So,
hey, if I owned my own house, I'd have many more cats and a couple of dogs, but I can't afford that shit. So,
I used to have pet rats. I really love rats, and I tuned in today. There was a rat live stream that I managed to stumble across because it was just rats. They're wonderful pets as well, but they don't live very long, which is the unfortunate side.
Oh, okay. Oh, they're just saying, it's just speculating last night.
creatures.
Mimsy's probably at least 15. So
OP
she's starting to feel her age, I think.
2 and 4 months now. Why are you staring at me though? Like he's just glaring at me. I'm wondering if it's because the washing machine finished, and like I did my little dance to the music because it was fun. And then he's just like, "But you haven't got up and put it out, Mum." Yeah, right now.
Yeah. You've got to do what the cat wants you to do. I just realized while I was tossing up, should I let this absorb a bit more or whatever? It's going to take an hour or so to filter through, so it's going to absorb more of the cinnamon as it does that anyway.
Mega Leech is off. Good night, Mega Leech.
Night, Mega Leech. I'd probably go to bed too soon. Although Nettie will be really upset. She's just gone off to get another drink, but I'll wait for her to come back. She'll probably really disappointed to hear I'm going to go to bed when she comes back.
Yeah, I should go to bed soon because I'm going to be up at 5:30, 6 o'clock.
Oh, goddamn. Yeah, okay. We should definitely go to bed. Wait for Nettie to come back, and then she'll be really disappointed to hear we're going to bed. But it's less rude going to bed while she's not here. So,
and hopefully Opie will share the bed. Currently, I'm in a third of the bed.
Oh, okay.
Because he's decided that he needs 2/3.
This one, when she behaves, she'll just sleep next to me, which is good. But sometimes, like if I'm lying on my back and I've sort of got my legs sort of like that, she'll go, "That looks really good, just between your legs there," and she'll lie between my ankles, and then I feel really guilty about moving because if I move, I'm kicking her, and it's like, "Oh, you're such a worry, Mimsy." But normally she'll behave and just sleep next to me. Mrs. Angry doesn't put up with her bullshit and just shoves her out of the bed, so she knows to stay on my side, and I'll be nice to her and let her sleep there. But
normally I try and move OP more over, but he knows if I've got my laptop balanced on my lap, that's far less likely to happen. So he will shove me out my own damn bed because then he gets more of the heated blanket. He's such a sook.
Kirsten's got 30 minutes of baking on your hair. What color are you putting in your hair, Kirsten? So we're obviously helping Kirsten fill in the time before she washes the color out of her hair. What color? You get like, you see how grey my beard's going already. Beard hair grows much faster than head hair because my beard and hair. But I do actually have this stuff like the just for men beard and mustache hair that it isn't as smelly as head hair.
Kirsten's going pink.
Natural color, yeah, that's good. Because
I've always said that, like with graying and if balding happens, because I have that, I've said I'm going the disgraceful route, and I'm going with the skullet look. Oh,
yes,
definitely. Well, it's weird because dye for your hair smells really bad, and you soon find out if you're a guy, if you put it in your beard, you're not meant to because you inhale all this really toxic fumes. But I do it anyway. And but the just for men stuff that's for beard and mustache, it's really weird because it doesn't smell at all. But you're only meant to leave it in for 5 or 10 minutes, and if
what do you do in that time?
Oh, I tell you what, if you leave it for longer, it fucking stains your face. You get all this beard. So you might see me being funny. I might, for a laugh, try and color my beard with just for men tomorrow morning. And if I fuck it up, you'll be able to see on the live stream tomorrow night because my facial hair would look weirdly painted on.
Kirsten,
I remember cringing when I saw Hulk Hogan's mustache that he obviously dyed during the late 90s in WCW. It was just like, no one believes that's your natural color, Hulk. Like, come on.
Yeah, it's kind of like I see a guy in his 60s with jet black hair, and I'm like, really, dude? I mean, I dye my hair, and I either dye it a slightly more subtle color, like a light brown, or a silly color, like it doesn't really show up in this light, but I use this. I forget what they call it. Rosewood is basically purple. So in bright light, all my grey hair picks up the purple highlights, and it's so I either do it a more subtle color or an obviously false color, as opposed to I'm just going to dye my hair jet black. No one will know it's not. Yeah, they really will know it's not natural. They honestly will. Kirsten uses Schwarzkopf. After a bit of experimentation, I found what worked with my hair is Garnier Nutrice, which has double bonus of being quite cheap.
I used to use that when I was blue-black for a long time.
Yeah.
This one, because this was done at my hairdresser's, Mario uses Fabuloso and Staino. So this is a combination of about I think it's 2 yellows, and I think he added something else in there.
Okay.
I don't know. I was just like, go nuts, Mario. But I loved it now.
Natural, baby.
All natural, baby.
My roots coming through. And so I've got like my natural if my hair wasn't dyed, it would look much more like my medium brown. But because my hair's dyed, it looks almost black in contrast to the yellow.
Yeah.
So it's really funny because people are just like, I had a couple of people that I see on the regular being like, I thought your hair was brown. I'm like, yes, my eyebrows are clearly showing you my hair is brown. My roots are brown. It's an optical illusion from the hair dye.
I have the pattern of girlfriends who would hate me because of the hair, because they go, well, what do you use? What do you do? And it's like, I use organic care shampoo and conditioner, and that's it. And they get very mad because they're like, all the tortures that femme people go through.
Looks so good, yeah.
But that's the thing, like, if you kind of don't do a lot to your hair and you let it just be, more often than not, that's going to be better for your hair. I think the problem that a lot of women and a lot of people who identify as women get trapped into is your hair has to look this way, and therefore you need to use XYZ products to get it to look that way. You don't. And I know I've had a few friends who have gone through the curly girl routine and finding a few different ways to use less products to let their curls actually be curls. And their hair is looking amazing because they're not putting all these crappy heavy silicons and that type of thing that's not designed for their hair on their hair, because they're not listening to mass media and actually going, okay, what is my hair type? Okay, it's this. What are the products I actually need to use for this, rather than just buying what some celebrity's marketing?
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure.
I must admit, though, every summer, particularly here in Queensland, I go through phases like I want to get a really drastic undercut, or I want to get a mohawk, or I want to just completely shave it off completely.
I can imagine that being a bit uncomfortable in Queensland, yeah.
Yeah, it's basically at the moment it is reasonably cold at the moment, but our lows are still your tops in Victoria.
Yeah, very much so.
But the rest, for 9 months out of the year, it's still like at the very least very warm.
Yeah.
The cat is stealing more of the bed.
This invisible chicken saying their purple used to be their go-to color. Thinking about lightening it so it can do more with it. See, I have what I like to call natural highlights, aka grey hair, which really picks up color if I put it in. So, Kirsten used to work for a shampoo company, and she asserts it's all garbage. So that's insider knowledge there. Look at the color. See, it's a much nicer color there, although it's still quite dark. I'm going to put it through. A second time. I think it'll be much lighter.
Amber ale in a way.
It is very amber, yeah. Well, and because the funny thing is, as I discovered with my whiskey sour, because the whey goes into the drink, and whey will foam up if you shake it. So like when I do a whiskey sour, I normally put egg white in, but there's a couple things you can use instead of egg white. There's a product called Wonder Foam that you apparently put a couple of drops in. That works. Aquafaba from chickpea juice will do it, and whey does it. So you got this clarified drink. If you think that looks like a lager now, if I shook that up and then poured it into a glass, it would have a head as well. Then it would really look like a beer. It would very much look like it. Might do that tomorrow night, actually. Shake it up.
Have you ever made a goon cocktail before, Angry?
A doom cocktail?
A goon.
Oh, no.
What's that? That's a good reaction.
No goon here. I mean, I had to go and buy a thing. I'll put up a video soon of my and I tried to make it on live stream. My New York sour, which is a whiskey sour with a red wine float on it. So I just went like to the Coles and there's a bottle shop. Found a $5 bottle of red wine. Wolf Blasts. So the rest of this is going to be used for cooking. This is young Ms. Angry makes a really good bolognese. So the rest of this will be used for cooking. I only needed about 15 mils of it for the drink. And it just worked perfectly because when I did the milk clarified whiskey sour, instead of being whiskey colored, which is very brown, it's a really bright, almost clear yellow. And then you shake it up so you get the white foamy head on top. And then you do a float of the red wine. So then you've got the white foam and a ring of red wine and then the yellow drink. Just visually, it looks so good. I'm going to put that video up sometime. I haven't edited it yet. But after the third attempt, I finally got it right. I thought I didn't have any red wine in the house because no one in the house drinks red wine. I thought, I've got some port. That's dark. That will work. Mrs. Angry says, won't that just sink? And I went, oh, I think the foam might keep it up. And so I tried. I'm doing it on camera, talking to camera, and I poured this port in, and it just all sank to the bottom of the glass. And I went, oh, okay. Mrs. Angry knows what she's talking about. Fine. And then I made it with vermouth. And so we got a red vermouth, and I thought that might work. And it kind of worked, but it's not red enough. So that was disappointing as well. So then I thought when I was going to the supermarket, fuck it, I'll get some red wine, and the rest of it can be used for cooking. And I did it, and it was fucking perfect. And I was so excited after 2 failed attempts to get one that actually worked perfectly. Was like, yay! It was all worth it. Oh yeah, Kirsten saw it. I posted the picture on the Instagram. It was very pretty. Just visually, it's just like, and it was really the differentiation was really distinct. Really yellow drink, really red wine, and then the white foam on top. The distinction between the three was so clear. Like it worked really well. I was really happy with it. But yes, I've got to the stage where the visual aspect of the drink is at least half the drink. The taste and stuff is important, but I'm really interested in what it's like visually as well.
When I was younger, I used to really quite like red wine, but I was a smoker at the time as well because I always found that red wine paired very well with a nice hand-rolled cigarette.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah.
Complementary tastes.
Yes,
Yeah.
I remember back when I was a little gothling, thinking I was really cool having those chocolate cigars.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Those,
everyone in the golf club here smoked clove cigarettes. It was always very garlicky.
Cigarettes are just, why are they a thing? They're evil. They're so nasty. But having said that, when I did socially smoke, I was smoking a really terrible, heavy brand of cigarettes that every time I'd be around someone who hadn't met me, they'd be like, are you really smoking these? And I'd be going, yeah, I was introduced to smoking by musicians. This brand in this strength, this is therefore what I'm smoking. So
I had a friend at uni who switched to smoking White Ox, which is best known for being a currency in Australian prisons.
Yes.
And it's very nasty. And his rationale to switching to it was, everyone keeps coming up to me and asking to bum a fucking smoke. If I start smoking this, no one will ask.
Yeah.
And it worked.
That's why people used to smoke menthols before they became absurdly expensive.
yes,
Yeah.
menthol.
No one asks for a menthol, except for other menthol smokers.
I love the menthol. God, I'm glad I quit smoking. However, every now and then I get a smell. So since you've named a brand, I'll name the brand that I used to smoke. I smoked Marlboro Reds. I can moron. And I smell them.
When I was feeling
someone smoking that and you smell it, oh, I'm just like, that takes me back. Jack Daniels, please.
My preferred brand, because I was a poser, was Benson and Hedges Smooth, because Bob Dylan smoked them.
really?
Yeah.
B&H White, B&H Gold. Peter Jackson. When I was not going out but hanging out at the house.
Yeah.
I remember
Peter Jackson
come grab their Pall Malls.
Pall Malls, God.
I smoked Moors. I smoked clove cigarettes. Can't even remember what they were called. Starts with G, I think.
Oh, Gallios, the French one.
Sorry?
They're like Gallios or something, the French ones?
Yeah, maybe. Oh, no, I think they were Indonesian. Or is that Beatties? No, I think that's Beatties.
I don't know.
Kirsten was
Beatties for a little bit. Hey?
Kirsten was a Marlboro Gold smoker, so I feel like we're similar wavelengths there. I can see Safa and Invisible Chicken haven't smoked. Invisible Chicken saying they're asthmatic. I was very mildly asthmatic. I'm now at the point I need a preventer, and I'm sure that wasn't helped by social smoking and being around all the smokers in the goth scene for so long. But now
I quit.
Who cares if I die? I'm already dead inside.
And I think maybe a handful of that community that I still talk to still smoke, but most of them vape now because they can have it with no nicotine.
Yes.
That was the thing. Like, we're all
and the smoke is so dramatic.
I know. One of my friends was really dramatic. How do you have the breath control for that, mate? You've been smoking nearly 20 years. He's like, I don't know, but it's my new favorite thing. So
vaping's kind of fun. Vaping is fun.
Well, the vapor from the vapes is heavier. Like, there are some super weird videos on YouTube. You look up vaping tricks. These people have learned things like they not only blow rings, but because the vape is heavier than air, if you get an air current, like these guys can actually push the smoke rings. Yeah, they've learned how to just get an air current going. So it looks like they're pushing this, and the smoke rings, unlike cigarette smoke, which dissipates really quickly, the vape will hang together for longer. There's something about the chemical makeup of it. And there are some super weird videos of vape tricks on YouTube.
I just always associate it with fedoras and Mountain Dew, unfortunately, with vapes.
Yeah, that's
there's a very subset of obnoxious people who love vaping.
With Adrian the hacker, who turned in Chelsea Manning. Who's the first person I ever saw vape?
Yeah. Well, Adrian Kalir, Aidsy, was the first person I knew who vaped. He was doing it for a couple of years before anyone knew what it was, because he had a friend who, I don't know, discovered it in China. I think he was importing all this stuff from China and no one knew what it was. And so Aidsy actually had a couple of years of having to explain to people what he was doing every time he did it in public, because no one knew what the hell it was. Now he sounds like a hipster if he says, I was doing it before everyone else. So, He was literally doing it for years before anyone else. But yeah. Anyway, look, I'm going to go to bed, you fine people. Thank you all.
I wanted to tell you something.
You can tell me something, Nettie.
Okay. On Second Life, they've got the Chelsea Hotel. Do you know?
Okay.
Yeah, they've got a replica of the Chelsea Hotel. I go there. I mean, when I used to go on Second Life, I used to go there. And they've got a replica of the murder scene from Nancy. What's her name?
Nancy Spungen. Yeah.
Nancy Spungen. Yeah. And it's creepy, even though it's like, it's crappy 2000s.
Graphics. It's still a bit creepy.
Graphics.
Yeah. Oof. Okay. Yeah, lots of famous people stayed at the Chelsea, and that's where Sid and Nancy stayed, and that's where she died. Yes. Well, that's a cheery note to end the night on, but I'm still going to do it.
We've circled back around.
You need to listen to me now.
Hotel. Okay, yeah, Mimsy's nudging me. Mimsy's saying, yeah, if you went to bed, I could sit on you. That would be cool. All right, Miss Mimsy, we're going to go to bed. So take care, everyone. And if you come back tomorrow night, I'll shake this up, and so it'll look like I'm drinking a beer. I think this will look bizarrely like a beer when it's done. I'm very intrigued as to what the flavor of this is going to be, because it's got rums and cinnamon and vanilla and sweetener and bitters. It's going to be, and lime and orange juice. It's going to be quite the melange of flavors. Yes. So I'll save it. I'll taste it for the first time on camera tomorrow night, because this is another in my line of experiments, and we'll see what it brings. I'll leave it in the fridge to finish filtering overnight. But yes, take care of yourself, one and all. Thanks.
Everyone going to tomorrow. Be safe, be sensible. Black Lives Matter, trans rights, all that.
Hell yeah. And take care.